Hello, everyone. Welcome to BRAP. It's Wednesday. It's April Fool's Day, April the 1st. Wow, this year's kind of flying by already, right? Fourth month of the year, and it's been a pretty interesting year so far in the gaming space. We had the conversation last Friday about the PlayStation 5 price increases that will go in effect tomorrow. There's been a pretty big what's going on, AC Gaming 80? It's been a quite a bit of, at least from what I'm reading on social media, there's been yes, beautiful day here in the DMV. I agree with you 110%. It's a great day here in the DMV. It's great to see it's great to see my fellow DMVers here in the live chat. So thank you, AC Gaming. I really appreciate you coming through and hanging out with us tonight. Chronorig says, I got my gold 1590 gold chain on. Yeah, there's a reason why I had the GeForce RTX 5080 here up on the screen sharing it, um, but yeah, just kind of a interesting time in the gaming industry, really, uh, with everything that's going on here globally. With there's still lingering inflationary pressures. There's still challenges in the supply chain now. The conflict in Iran is not helping that. By the way, if you think about the rising cost of oil and gas and how that impacts transportation, logistics, all of that gets funneled down to the consumer. That isn't really discussed enough, I don't think. How what happens here globally as we live in this global economy, and how things like disruptions to the supply chain or increases in helium, which is used to produce um, hardware parts. Um, Obviously, the AI boom, right? The shortage of RAM. I mean, all those things have a downstream impact that affect the price to consumers. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Some people were, I posted something on Twitter the other day, just providing some historical perspective, and I said it's perspective only. With the cost of gaming, right? How historically how expensive the launch of consoles have been over the last 40 something years, right? And introduced a bit of macroeconomics that some people weren't too happy about, and I don't understand why. And we'll get into that in a little bit. And yeah, so Chrono Rig, I don't. Yeah, we talk about some of the economic challenges right now, and you're not wrong. I'm not a. I look. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a conservative or a liberal or whatever the case, whatever your political affiliation is, but um, I don't disagree with you, Rig, that the orange guy. uh, we all warned our fellow gamers, like, don't vote for him because he's going to disrupt the global economy in a way that's probably not going to benefit you, and we're seeing that play out right now. We're seeing that play out in the form of tariffs, which are impacting gamers today. I mean, it's this perfect storm. It's almost a perfect storm of sorts. And it's not just impacting console gaming. I mean, you look at PC. I mean, that's why I have the RTX 5080. And so if you missed Friday's show, you may have heard me discuss the. Let me get Game Logic in here. Oh, Game Logic left. Okay, maybe we'll come back. Before we get Logic back in, do me a favor, do the YouTube thing, hit the like button, and drop the link here in the live chat. Let everyone know that we're live. So yeah, so if you were listening to Friday's show, excuse my voice is a little got a sore throat today, allergies. You know how it is, AC gaming, living in the DMV. I suffer from seasonal allergies, it sucks, so my voice is a little I have a sore throat, but all right, so, on Friday, I talked about, the new PC that I just bought. It's actually an MSI build. It's a pre-built 'cause, what I found was that right now, the pre-builds tend to be a bit cheaper than if you were to build your own PC, pick out your own parts, and, I tried, like, Innate, went on the Micro Center website, picked out some parts, and then I was playing around with some of with the part picker there, and it just got to a point where I think I was at, like, $3,000 for a new PC build, at least a PC build that I wanted, and I was able to get I was able to get a MSI, RTX build, RTX 5080, with the Ryzen 9 9900X, 360 millimeter, AIO cooler, and 32 gigs of RAM and 2 terabytes of storage. So it cost me about, I think it was about 24 or $2,500. Now, I've had the PC for 2 weeks now. Now, I went back and I got it from Costco. Now, this is interesting. I went to Costco's website the other day. The build that I the build that I ended up going with is sold out now. Yeah, pollen is crazy. What's going on here down under? Yes, Chopper, Eric, all the pollen. So, yeah, I went to Costco and it's sold out. And actually, it's interesting because when I went back to the Costco site, it's back up. It was actually there was they had a sale on on the desktop, the gaming rig that I purchased, and it's back up to its regular price of $2,600. So it's back up in price and it's sold out. So it's funny, like I'm looking at this the Nvidia website here. It's like GeForce RTX 5080. Starting at 999. I haven't seen an RTX 5080 card for 999 in quite some time. I don't know if it Nate's in the chat, but if they're out there, please let me know. I haven't seen one. Glenn says, have the Pro increase about 17.5% in New Zealand. Wow. Yeah, I think we'd all agree here. Price increases are not fun. I don't care for them, never have. Although some people would lead you to believe that I'm advocating for them, which I'm not. I don't care for price increases. No one does. Price increases are one of the reasons why I stayed away from upgrading, my PC, my previous PC build from a 3070 now to the 5080. But anyhow, Chopper Eric says, "I'm glad you" let's say it, I'm glad you snagged, at the cheaper price then. I knew you were on the fence with 2 different builds. Yeah, no, I mean, I really am. I mean, I'm just timing, right? Timing. And so, yeah, so I'm really happy that I got the build. My 5080 build is my de facto Xbox now, which leads me to a Twitter post. Gonna segue into something here real quick. I don't know if anyone saw this post on Twitter, but So look, anytime I upgrade a PC, right? I just get I get look, I get excited, right? New piece of hardware, right? This is actually a picture of my build. I have the green RGBs. That's nod to Xbox. And someone actually asked me, "BRAP, why do you have green RGBs?" Which my reply to them was, "Well, this has become my Xbox, and honestly, the definitive way to experience Xbox." And I do think it's the definitive way for me to experience Xbox because it gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of performance. I get the cheaper tier of Game Pass with PC Game Pass. And I mean, I somebody it's funny, like I had and I'll share this in a I'll show some of the responses here in just a bit, but um there were some people that I felt like actually maybe took offense to this tweet because I said this was the definitive way to experience Xbox. Um yeah, for me it is. For me it's the definitive way to experience Xbox. I've been saying that for a long time now that and when Microsoft started bringing their games day and date on PC, it actually brought me back to PC. AC Gaming says, "Should have picked up a Pro when I had a chance." Look, AC Gaming, can you grab one on Amazon right now? Is it an option for you? Yeah, here down. I don't think they'll ever get back to 500 this generation. I don't see that happening. Probably not next generation either, but um so I put this tweet out and some interesting responses. I I I get the sense there were some people that were upset about this, that I said this was the definitive way to experience Xbox. Yeah, absolutely. For me, it is. You know, and I say, and this is actually that's not an insult to. And I think some people maybe took it as a slight to the Xbox console. It's not. Um, when Microsoft decided to bring the ecosystem to PC, the Xbox ecosystem to PC, and bring their games, their first party games, day and date, that was a big reason for me to move on to PC. And actually, at the time when I moved to when I purchased, I got back into PC gaming with a 2070 RTX. I still actually had an Xbox. And even when I upgraded my 3070, I still had the Xbox Series X. Now, I wasn't using my Xbox Series X a lot. My kids were using it a bit, but I really wasn't using it. Just because again, I mean, I had a 3070 at the time. It was just a better experience in terms of just performance, but also um you know, I just preferred the I just enjoyed the flexibility that PC allowed for me to have, um, with while enjoying the Xbox ecosystem, which I think is great. I think Microsoft in that regard's done a great job. I mean, you look at like PlayStation, Nintendo's not non-existent on PC, but PlayStation has some presence now, although they've now removed their first party exclusive games to coming to PC. They'll still release live service games that they publish, develop, um, but even then, like you had to wait, right? Like you had to wait for their first party games to release on PC, and then you didn't get the level of integration on PC with the PlayStation ecosystem that you do with Xbox, and I think that's a feather in the cap to Xbox, to be honest with you. Let me get Logic in here real quick. Hey, Logic, what's going on?
How's my friend? How are you?
No, no special profile pick this week.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but no, welcome to the show, Logic. Great to see you as always. By the way, great show last night. Great show. Um, I learned a lot last night, believe it or not. And I know that we talked quite a bit, but um, yeah, it was a great conversation. Really great conversation. Um, So I'm actually, I know we talked a little bit about this, but did you see this tweet that I put out, Logic? I know we talked about it off air, but this is the tweet that I put out about, like, somebody asked me like why I had the green RGBs on my PC, and I explained to them like this has become like my this is my Xbox now, and I said honestly it's the definitive way to experience Xbox, which that's fine if you don't agree with that. That's whatever. I think it's the definitive experience, but there's some people that like Ledger. I don't know if they were offended by that. Um, but I got this weird like same energy vibe from people who were like, "Well, do you do that for PlayStation? Do you turn on blue lights?" And I'm like, "No," because PlayStation at this point is pretty much non-existent on PC. And even when their first party games came out, I didn't want to wait, which is why I have a PlayStation. I have a PS5 because I want to enjoy. I have a PS5 Pro, but I want to enjoy. Um, and I got the Pro because I want the best versions or the best experience of their first party releases. Um, and even third party content at the time because when I got my PS5 Pro, I was still on my 3070 RTX. Now that's going to change. Now I'm going to primarily using my PC again for third party content or third party games with the 5080. But yeah, like some people are like, "Oh, do you turn on the blue lights?" And actually, like if I do play a PlayStation game on PC on Steam, yeah, I'll fire up the blue lights. As you know, I have an addiction with RGBs, which is why like I was so happy when I opened up the box that the PC came in and plugged it in. I realized that I had Corsair RGB RAM sticks. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." I've never had RGB RAM sticks, Logic. Never had them. So, and I don't know if you heard earlier, Logic. I don't know if you were listening to the show earlier, but this PC build that I just bought from Costco 2 weeks ago, the price has gone back up and it's sold out now.
Oh wow, went back up to like 2,500?
2,600,
Oh wow.
and it's sold out.
Well, it was pretty close to selling out when you bought yours, right? Weren't there only like a limited number of units left, and like the closest Costco to you actually was out of stock?
Yeah, I at the closest Costco to me had at the time that when I was looking at it, it said low stock. And then a couple days went by and then it was out. They didn't have it in store. There were a couple other Costco's probably within like 16 miles, 20 miles of me that had inventory. But I didn't I mean it was still available for shipment online. I didn't have to go to those stores to get them to go pick up that to go pick it up. But now it's like you can't even get it online now. It's completely sold out. It's
Yeah,
not even like it's not available for shipment anymore. It's like it's done. And like I said, it's back up to $2,600.
yeah. I guess that just goes to show that people will pay money for luxury items.
Oh man. We'll get into that in a little bit. Um but I it's this is this this tweet that I put out, like I didn't think I'd get the responses that I would that I did. Um I tell you what though, Logic, I love this build. You know what I like about it? Because remember the old build that I had? The the radiator, the AI was like in the front.
Yeah, the AIO.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. The AIO was in the front. And then I didn't have any
Yeah,
fans up top.
don't want you to say AI in this in this time of great AI fear and you know
You take a lot of technophobia.
yeah, exactly.
Look, I share some of that a little bit with AI, and that's because of the Matrix and James Cameron, the Terminator. You know, I have this thing in the back of my mind. We're like, I don't know, like maybe Hollywood warned us of they sent us an early warning about AI. I always think about what Morpheus said when he talked about when he introduced when Neo finally um was disconnected from the Matrix, and I forget, Morpheus said something like in the face of like their own, they marveled at their, like, mankind marveled at their own creation of AI, and then basically AI like took them over and we became batteries. Like I that actually like scares me a little bit, Logic, that could happen, you know?
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen off of you running a search out of ChatGPT.
Probably not. Or actually using AI to enhance the visuals of a video game. Probably not.
Yeah, probably not going to. Probably not going to turn us all into batteries because it's guessing pixels at what the next frame is in Resident Evil.
Yeah. So that's what I love about this build. Like, it's got the AIOs in the front. It's a 360 millimeter AIO, which, by the way, great recommendation, Logic, because this thing runs so cool. Like, it is, like, I can feel it right now. Cold air. I was playing Cyberpunk, had path tracing on, DLSS enabled. I mean, it was just, I mean, it wasn't even breaking a sweat. So, but yeah, I didn't have the fans up top, which I probably should have had for my other build, because I remember there were games where I would play and I could feel the heat coming off the side of the plexiglass. You could just feel it, I don't get any of that with this build, but I'm loving it. I mean, I'm glad. I'm glad I decided to pull the trigger when I did. I think maybe I got a little lucky here with the timing, considering that the price went back up and there's no, they no longer have any in stock at the moment. So yeah, so here are the some of the responses I got, Logic. Do you change it to blue to experience PlayStation first party games on PC? And I actually replied, yes, I do when I play them on PC and red for Nintendo.
And I mentioned to you what's
Yeah.
so weird to me about this thread is I would swear a month before now, 2 months before now, it would have been the exact opposite response. Because 2 months ago, it was everything is an Xbox. The consoles are all basically PCs. ROG Xbox Ally X. It doesn't matter if it's a PC. Xbox can call an Xbox whatever Xbox wants to call an Xbox.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty certain had you done this 2 months ago, you would have gotten the exact opposite response.
Yeah, it's just, and that's the part, and that's what I'm getting to. Like, it was weird for me to see some of the responses, because I'm thinking like this is an area that Microsoft and Xbox have excelled in this console generation, or this generation, right? That they've given people the opportunity to experience the ecosystem outside of the traditional console, which a lot of the fan base, to your point, thought was more or less the future of gaming, right? Thought that by Microsoft doing this, they were more pro-consumer than PlayStation or Nintendo. And the vibes that I got from this was like I had like punched their mother in the face or something. Like I had said something awful.
Oh, BRAP.
Yeah.
A new they've had a change of command. A new executive is in place, and so somebody else who's handing out the public affairs flyers to run the psyop out of the secret Discord. So,
oh my God,
the Politburo has issued new propaganda, and everybody's got to toe the line.
But like again, like I just don't understand. Like I'm like, I love the fact that I have my green RGBs. Because like to me, it's like it's not that the console isn't good enough, right? And for me, like having the green RGBs is like fuck yeah, like we talked about like the OG Xbox, right? The most powerful piece of hardware at the time in the console space. And I look at my PC, the current build, and on all the previous builds that I had, the 2070, 3070. I look at it like in the same way as I did. I look at it like the OG Xbox, this powerful piece of hardware, that has the where I can experience the entire Xbox ecosystem. I mean, some of the pushback that I was getting was like, well, yeah, how's that quick resume working for you? I'm like, what? Like that's not the gotcha you think it is. Yeah, quick resume is a nice feature, but I'm also getting the cheapest version of Xbox Game Pass. I also have the flexibility of hardware performance. Like I've got I've got my friends list. I got in-game chat. I get, like I get all the features of Xbox Live. So I don't have quick resume. Like that's some kind of own now. Like I just it's just really weird. And again, like for me, logic, like I look at like the green RGBs, and to me, that is like that's like a tip of the cap to Xbox for me. There's a little bit of nostalgia there for me because I remember when the original Xbox launched, and I love like the green color, the Xbox logo. And I'll never forget when I got my 2070 and it came with RGBs. One of the first things I did was like, yeah, this is my new Xbox. Hell yeah, I'm firing up the green RGBs. I just never thought that people would be offended by it or by this comment. So like this
No,
one guy here. Yeah, go ahead.
that's because 4 months ago it was, I can't wait to walk into a store and buy parts to build my own Xbox. And now that new marching orders have been issued, now the byline is you can't walk into a store and buy your own parts and build a Project Helix. So therefore, it's a console.
So do you think that's what this is? Like they don't want to admit to themselves that maybe is this like a Helix thing, like some kind of like I don't know, like stigma with Helix that they have, some
Yeah,
kind of
this is
like
no, it's the flip between the voice track from PR that 4 months ago it was we don't care where you play your games anywhere. We're closely aligned to PC. We're bringing PC back. We're doubling down on our dedication to it. That's where we're seeing the biggest growth. Look at the ROG Xbox Ally X, ROG Xbox Ally. That's pretty much the template of where we're going. And now Asha has come in and torn up the everything is an Xbox PR campaign, and so now it's back to an Xbox is an Xbox. Everything's not an Xbox. An Xbox is an Xbox because Microsoft gets to define what an Xbox is. But the problem with that is that Microsoft has differently defined what an Xbox is twice within the last 9 months, and each time the community has towed the line on whatever that PR and voice track is, rather than having their own premise and their own square to stand on what it means to them. But they insist vehemently that everyone will agree that it's whatever Microsoft calls it, and that therefore there's no market confusion and there's no problem. They've been communicating it for several years. They've been telling you that this is where they're going. But now the script has changed, but yet it's the exact same argument, just pointed in the opposite direction.
yeah. Yeah. It's weird. Yeah, so this is kind of this is one of the interactions I had. Can't keep the same energy for PlayStation, can you? Like what is like why are we introducing PlayStation here? Like this is and I'm like, so this bothered you? Like I thought it was super weird. And we kind of and I did entertain this individual a little bit. Where I explained to him, I said, no, I said, look, there's nothing unusual about someone switching hardware within an ecosystem that's built on flexibility. That is what Microsoft and that's what Xbox, Phil Spencer's talked about for years.
Well, and more. So what's kind of very intellectually broken in this exchange, right? Is this is the same problem that they had back years ago that I felt never made any sense, and I'm like, you do understand that both PC and both Xbox are derived from Microsoft, right? Like it's literally the same platform. Like again, so why are you like more? It is the PC and Xbox are more closely akin. They are two animals of the same phylum. I'm like, why would you ever argue about people playing Xbox games on PC or Xbox gamers being on PC? It never made any sense back then, and it makes even less sense now. Now that they've been, telling you that, especially for the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and again, I mean, this is and actually, like what I would have thought would have been that, oh yeah, like If anything, if you're gonna console war, it's, "Oh, yeah, PlayStation can't do that," "Xbox is pro-consumer." I mean, that was kind of like the narrative and the rah-rah behind Xbox. But you're right, I to your point, I guess the marching orders have changed, but, it was just a very odd exchange, and and what I said was like, "Look, like, there's nothing unusual about someone switching hardware, right?" Like, I didn't just because you don't own an Xbox console, right? And you're on PC on Xbox, doesn't mean that you're not inside that Xbox ecosystem. Like,
I mean,
for Microsoft, like, they don't care where you are.
I thought a month ago that your PC was an Xbox, and I'm pretty sure Jason Ronald just said like 2 weeks ago, claimed that people don't think of themselves as PC gamers and console gamers and mobile gamers, which is a false statement that I absolutely disagree with. But if that's one of your members of the church speaking from the pulpit, then I would think that you would agree with that.
Mhm.
I don't get why you're so incensed to riot.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's confusion in the camp. And
Do
you
you
guys
think
might
this
want to
is
get together and get your story straight.
do you think this is part of it? Like, it's confused, like, the messaging has switched so much, they're like, they don't know what to think?
Yeah. It's like the Secretary of State said, right? He
Oh,
doesn't,
boy.
it's not clear to him who's making decisions in Iran or who's in charge.
No, there's been regime change from my understanding, but it's another conversation. Um, but I said, like, that's the whole point of, like, the Xbox ecosystem, right? Flexibility. You know, tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev. Like, that's the premise of the Xbox ecosystem. And what I said, it was like, look, this just comes down to preference. For whatever reason, you've taken issue with that, which I think he did. If someone enjoys the Xbox ecosystem on PC, that should be a good thing and not twisted in some tired console war narrative. And that's the part that really threw me off, that people were turning this into some kind of console war or some kind of slight against Xbox because I said PC's the definitive way to experience Xbox. And what they said, and so what ended up happening, there were some other people in this thread logic. What they did was they cherry picked hardware, right? And they took that and said, well, does that means you're okay with playing PlayStation games on inferior hardware? You know? And I'm like, I first of all, no one's even making that argument. Second of all, yeah, if PlayStation's ecosystem existed in the same way, and I've talked about this earlier. If PlayStation's ecosystem exists in the same way that the Xbox ecosystem does, then I'd be playing PlayStation games on PC. I'd be in the ecosystem on PC. I'd have my blue RGBs on anytime I was, inside that PlayStation ecosystem. And it's not just the games. And that's what I was trying to explain too. It's everything in that ecosystem that I can get on PC, which I think Microsoft's done a great job of doing that, providing providing that ecosystem, providing most of those feature sets, outside of Quick Resume. But I got Xbox Live, I got the cheaper version of Game Pass, right? I get cross save. I mean, like I mean, yeah. If PlayStation offered those things and I could get that PlayStation like experience on PC, yeah, I'd be on PC playing PlayStation games. There was somebody else responded. I can't find it now, but someone else said something to the effect like, you that I was basically what was it? I forget now. Someone brought up something about the reason why you can play the reason why you can play Xbox games on PCs because Xbox doesn't force you to buy exclusives on their platform. And so that argument came up that exclusives are bad. That was something else that came out of it. I'm like, and I think this goes back to like we've talked about, like this idea of being forced. Like, you're not being forced. You still have a choice. You either buy a PlayStation or you don't buy a PlayStation. And that's it.
Oh, BRAP. Xbox is forcing you to buy a console because you can only play Gears of War 2 and 3 on console.
Oh man. Yeah, just an odd back and forth. Yeah, and if anything, like for me, Logic, like this is for me like a like I think this is a great thing that the like if you're somebody who wants to get off console and go PC, but you don't but you want that Xbox ecosystem, like yeah, this is it.
I think what's weird to me, and this is why I differ with the contention that many of the Xbox content creators, as they assert they are consumer advocates. I think what the truth of the matter is right now, an Xbox console gamer, a dyed-in-the-wool Xbox console gamer, doesn't know what to do, right? Doesn't know what the next move is because they're uncertain if they shift to PC. They're uncertain about whether or not they're going to be able to get ubiquitous backwards compatibility to all of their console titles. It's rumored at, hinted, and suggested, but they're not absolutely certain. That capability they know and believe is coming to Project Helix, but they don't know exactly how. There are elements of Helix that are going over to PC, but they don't know exactly what features and functions specifically. Then they ask, should I continue to invest in the Xbox ecosystem on console? Well, Project Helix comes along and it's going to introduce other game stores. How do I start building my Steam library, or should I? Now, some of the people that we used to associate with had some good pathways for that. They had a console and then they had a Steam Deck, and so they were building their PC library on Steam Deck. And then if they eventually go PC one day, they'll just unpack that Steam suitcase and all that stuff will be there. But it's to me, it's very uncertain right now with exactly what Project Helix is, in terms of, do I continue investing in my Xbox console library with an expectation that that's going to be a worthwhile investment coming here down the road for a generation or two generations. I mean, I have my theory, other people have their theory on exactly how the thing is going to work, but it's like, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to, pick and choose a content creator whose theory to buy into? And then what if that person's wrong,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can understand that perspective. That the uncertainty of what's next. You know, because it does seem like they're not gonna make a traditional console, right? They're just gonna blend console and PC together. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and I think we'll talk about the price of gaming. I think if this thing comes in above $1,000, like actually, like I would tell someone if you have the means to do it and you're at $1,200, maybe look at getting a PC rig.
Well, and that's the thing there too, right? So if by cost the next thing coming down the road is
It,
not something that I'm going to be able to pay for, then what am I what am I doing continuing to invest in Xbox console games to continue fleshing out my library? Right? If the end of the road for me is
yeah,
the
yeah,
Series X,
yeah,
how am I going to be able to get to new games that I buy?
yeah. That's a great point. That's something Microsoft's going to have to address, right? But and by the way, like I don't say that. Like I don't say like if you're at $1,200, let's just hypothetical, right? If Helix is $1,200 or $1,500, whatever the case is, again, hypothetical. Like me suggesting to someone, hey, maybe look at a PC rig. That's not a slight, and this is the other thing too. When you say that, people take offense to that. Oh, what do you mean? Like it's almost like you're saying Helix isn't good enough. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, if you have the means to do it, there are some pluses, right? When you're at that $1,200, $1,500 price point to maybe look at a PC, right? Um, you're gonna get an open platform. You're gonna get assuming they keep it, you're going to get the cheaper version of Game Pass. You don't have to pay for online multiplayer or the online play. You have access to Steam, which you may have on Helix as well. But you have the opportunity, the ability to really upgrade your parts. If you want to swap out some RAM sticks, I mean, that might be expensive, um, or uh, or increase your storage capacity, like or maybe you want to swap out for a better CPU. You have the opportunity to do that.
Well, my key thing is it's also just a statement of like basic consumerism,
Yeah,
like that should be understood, right? We talk about this in real business. We talk about this in pricing strategies all the time, right? We talk about it when we're doing our own assessments of kind of the industry and what we expect people to do. If there is a product, if there's a high expense product on the market and it's $1,100, $1,200, then consumers will naturally say, once you're above that price point, right? Consumers think in pricing brackets. So when you're down at the $500 or $600 level, bumping up to $1,000, that's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. But once you break $1,000 and you're into that 10,000, you're into that 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 price bracket, it is natural that consumers will say, if I'm going to get a significantly greater capability by bumping to $1,500 or $1,600, right? This is like, again, look at the Apple pricing brackets and look at how they try and guard against cannibalization. But also look how close some of those brackets are in terms of encouraging consumers to potentially bump up. So when you look at a MacBook Air, if you're on a baseline MacBook Air, you're at a point, if you're looking at a baseline MacBook Air configuration, you're at a point where Apple's not that worried about cannibalization. But once you start packing stuff onto a MacBook Air, because of course, obviously within the Apple formula, you can't just get that aftermarket, right? Once you start packing stuff onto a MacBook Air, you start saying, well, now, why, how much of a difference is it for me to just bump up to a MacBook Pro, the 14-inch? So, I mean, these are the things consumers do, and these are the same things that we talked about with pricing of the PlayStation 5 Pro, right? And we said, once you get up to a certain price point, and maybe less of the PlayStation 5 Pro, but the PlayStation 6, whatever the consumer electronics category is, the point is that once you start getting into those price ranges, saving for an extra payday or two to get to a $1,600 device that has significantly greater capability is something people are going to consider.
110%. I mean, that's kind of what that's where I landed. That's really where I landed. Logic. That's a great point with my current PC, because you may remember I was looking at I think I was looking at a 5070 or 5070 Ti, right? And I want to say they were about $300 cheaper than the 5080 that I have now. But at that point, like I'm already close to that point. I'm at close to $2,000 or at $2,000. And so, like, what's another $400 at that point? You know what I mean? Again, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that for some people that $400 may be like, no, I'm not. That's beyond my threshold, right? But I guess my point is, and I think to your point too, Logic, is you start having those conversations potentially, right? If you're above that, in my case, $2,000, then you start looking at, well, for an extra 300, I'm going to get probably a little bit longevity out of the 5080 than the 5070. I'm going to get better performance, right? And there's value in that. There's value in that, spending that additional $200 to $300, especially now that I'm at that level now of, I forget how much the 50 or the 5070 was. I think it might have been like 18, 1900, 2000. So, and I've done that for other consumer, like I've done that for other purchases that I've made. I actually did that recently with my, I was looking at baseball bats for my son during travel. And I remember like, we were at like $300 for a bat, and he's like, well, I want this bat. It's $400. I'm like, well, shit, I'm already at 300. Yeah. I could scrape by and just do another 100. Like, cause of that, it's not, I'm not going, I'm not, spending $300 more. I'm not doubling, but I'm spending another $100 for something that, is probably gonna be a little bit more performant. And to me, that extra $100 is worth it.
Yeah, you hit on a good point. The longevity. When
Mhm.
people, whenever people ask me about buying laptops, buying PCs, buying PC parts, that's a key component that I always pull them for to figure out what their customer requirements are. Right, like I always say, look, if you're going to go short term and you think that you're going to upgrade or change out or do a trade in program, then it's fine to buy less capability, right? Because you're looking at it in a short window. But if you're going to keep something for a long period of time, I used to especially talk about this with laptops when people would ask me, recommendations for laptops, and I'd say, look, if you're the type of person who's going to keep the laptop for 5 years or more, then yeah, go ahead and spend the money on the extra top end because you want the longevity, you want the performance for as long as you possibly can, and you're making you're making an investment for the long term. In addition to that, that higher end laptop will probably have better resale value, right? Given the amount of time that you're going to keep it. So yeah, at that point, it becomes warranted to pay, the extra money for certain things. But if you're a short term buyer, then it doesn't make sense, right? To blow it out with a bunch of high end specs if you think you're gonna turn it around and upgrade in short term.
Yeah, chat still says, "Isn't the 5070 Ti like 5% weaker?" And it's about 10 the 5080 is about 10 to 15% faster, but my understanding with the 5080 over the 50 correct me if I'm wrong here, logic. The 5080 over the 5070 Ti's, the 5080, you're gonna get better, like higher free I can't even talk. Better higher refresh, a better 4K gaming overall than you will with a 5070 Ti. You see that's accurate logic?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a long time. The I think the major kicker with the 5070 Ti is, isn't it a 12 gigabyte VRAM card?
No, they both have 16 gigabytes
Are they both
of
16?
yeah, and some people were kind of some of the, enthusiasts were a little upset about that when the 5070 Ti was announced. But my understanding is, like, for 4K gaming, the RTX 5080 is still better. Yeah. Now, I mean, like, depending who you speak to, like, some people say, the price value of the 5070 Ti is generally considered better, um, but, again, the 5080 is gonna be better for 4K
I mean, it's
and higher
marginally
refresh
better.
rate gaming, yeah.
It's marginally better. Like the chart I use, the video card value price to performance ratio, dollar to performance ratio is $30.31 for a
Mhm,
5070 Ti, and for a 5080, it's $27.46.
mhm.
So like at that point, I'm like, okay, well, like wouldn't necessarily matter that much. I think the big key difference for me, the reason why I went with the 5080 was retail price. So when you talk about what the 5070 Ti has been going for at retail, I mean that's a $1,000 card, right? That's supposed to MSRP at $799. And then if you don't get one at that $1,000 mark, it can get pretty steep, right? You can easily quickly get into $1,100, $1,200 range. Um, Whereas you look at the 5080, and again, if you're buying raw parts, right? Um, that price is floating between 1,300 and 1,500, and the price delta just to me isn't that much. And I know for me, when I'm shopping for a car, when I'm shopping for and I shop for cards in different bands. So let's talk about the top end. I'm just going to get the best performing card that I can. Um, without, I mean, quite frankly, without buying the 5090. I mean, the reason I haven't bought a 4090 or a 5090 is one, the 12 volt, uh, the 12 volt V power, H power, whatever connector has continued to be a problem. More so to me than it should be. That wiring harness, and then the price of the 5090 that's been going on the market has just been absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's never been anywhere close to MSRP, and it's just been well above any amount that even I would pay for a GPU. So
Yeah, it's super ex the 5090 is insanely expensive.
Yeah, I mean that card's going for close to $4,000 now, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's I have a tough time believing that I would ever on a single pen stroke, right, pay $4,000 for an entire PC. So I just can't see myself paying $4,000, for a
Yeah.
GPU.
Yeah. No, I that is my limit. Again, I'm super happy with the bill that I bought. I mean, for $2,500, I that to me was a great deal. Considering I think I paid close to that, probably paid about 2,200 for my 3070 when I got that 4 years ago. All right. I'm sorry. Give me a second, Logic. Trying to pull up this tweet. Give me a sec here. All right. I know you saw this tweet, Logic. So I tweeted this out a couple days ago. And this is kind of on. This is after we Sony announced the price increases, which go into effect tomorrow. By the way, Logic. I wish Forte was on. I'd be curious to see like if he's seen like a rush to get people coming in to get PlayStation 5s before the price increase uh, goes in effect tomorrow. I know that. I mean, I've seen some chatter online on social media about people going out and buying PlayStation 5s ahead of the price increase.
Well,
Um,
the pros, right?
I think, yeah, the pros, yeah. I mean, you got to imagine, Logic, that we're probably like, it's going to be interesting to see like the Circana numbers. Would imagine that like PlayStation probably gets some kind of bump out of this, and people kind of going out at the 11th hour to try to get their hands on a Pro, or maybe even upgrade to a base PlayStation because the prices are about to increase. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. I mean, there's probably gonna be, what you think, Logic, but I imagine there's probably gonna be some kind of fallout. I guess what I'm, and we can get to this a little bit later. I guess what I'm curious, and this is what I've been thinking about more recently, is I even wonder if there's going to be a significant decline in console sales. I have a theory about that I'll share a little bit later, but um, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the numbers look like um, following the price increase um, from Circana. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of drop off, but just curious to see how big that drop off is going to be for PlayStation. So, all right. So I tweeted this out on the 27th. I said, for perspective only. This is important, by the way. For perspective only, gaming has always been a luxury item. And you talked a little bit. By the way, Logic, again, great show. You talked a little bit about this last night on your show. Um, and you went back. I think you pulled some economic data trends on historical trends on the middle class. Is that, just want to make sure I'm getting that correct?
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I mean that's the central thesis, but yeah, I pulled a bunch of data on a bunch of stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to share that real quick, Logic? I know it was quite a bit of information. I thought it was great
It's not
information.
it's not quick, so
Okay.
I mean you probably want to
Okay.
laser guide exactly, what it is you want me to go over.
Yeah. Oh my, you're right. There was a lot that you brought up. Um, and I can't
I
think of
mean,
just, yeah.
when I like walk through like the central thesis.
Yeah.
So and bear with me because I didn't write down the central thesis first. Like I had it in my head and then I pulled a bunch of stuff together. I still have yet to go down and write the baseline, so I don't quite have the voice track nailed just yet. But basically, it's this. Well, actually, that's more of an affordability discussion. So maybe let's not start there. Let's start with maybe the topic of is gaming a luxury item? And that answer to that, it seems like incredibly simple to me. Um, we have theories in psychology. We have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is typically depicted as a pyramid. And at the lower part of the pyramid, the widest base, which means the thing that people are most dependent upon, are things like warmth, security, food, shelter, right? Those are the basic amenities and basic needs that people have. Your next step up are the things that you really need to live and maintain like the basic human dignity, right? In terms of lifestyle in whatever socioeconomic system you live in. And so the next step up would be things like paying your electricity bill, paying your heat bill, paying your, you can argue, where these things fall, but your ISP and phone bill.
I think I argued Netflix last night.
Right.
But Netflix is not one of them. But yeah, go ahead.
So that's like the next step up. Then the next step up are enablers, right? Empowering things, where you get your level of like self-confidence and self-assurance from. And then you start getting into what I think of as first world issues. And that's part of my problem with this notion of people trying to adjudicate that gaming is not a luxury item. Like, we really have to gain a more worldly view and understand that things that gamers complain about in particular, not just gamers, but things that a lot of people complain about, are entirely first world problems. For anyone who's traveled outside this country and looked at the excessive poverty that many swaths of other nations live in, that things that people don't have access to quite frankly, for people to be arguing that gaming is not a luxury and that it has a certain level of mandatory affordability is kind of ludicrous. So from there, now we can get into a discussion of, right, what the research shows in terms of middle class, what the research shows in terms of who is middle class and who is upper income, because those are different things. We can talk about what's going on in the world today from a financial perspective, and we can talk about what's been going on in the world from the 1960s, 1970s, up until now, and why there's this revisionist history going on that somehow people think that gaming has always fit within this notch, has always throughout its 54-year history fit within this notch of affordability, and then just now all of a sudden it's becoming like an untenable thing, because that's absolutely not the case when you actually walk through the history.
It's crazy that it's so funny. Like, we talk about, like, I think a very easy definition of a luxury item, right? Like you said, like, basically a non-essential. It's basically like a luxury goods, like, just a non-essential, like, thing that, or item, that you don't need to survive, right? Like, that's, like, to me, that's just like very basic understanding. And it's interesting because, like, when I put this tweet out, Logic, like, and I said this, I specifically say, for perspective only, gaming has always been a luxury item. Take the launch of Nintendo Entertainment System, and I know we talked a little bit about this off air, but my other point to this too is that, there's just to point out, like, even the launch of consoles, right, are generally expensive, right? Kind of driving that point home of it being a luxury item. And now there were some other people that were in a thread saying, "Oh, well, console generations, the price of consoles always decrease." True, they have. I think it's a separate conversation. But even with the initial purchase of a console, like, you're still buying things for that console. Like, it's not a one-time upfront expense, right? It's not like when you go out and buy a pair of Ferragamos, you're done. You buy your Ferragamos, you take them home, you're done, right? That's it. Gaming's a long-term investment, right? During the course of a console generation, you're buying software, you're buying peripherals, you're buying nowadays you're buying a pro version of a console. If you choose to do that, you're subscribing. If you're in a subscription service, you're doing that. You're doing microtransactions. So it's this consistent spend, right? So I don't know, Logic. I was just surprised to see some of the pushback, people saying it's not a luxury good. And I'm like, no, like
Mm,
this thing's absolutely a luxury. It always,
well,
it always.
I think the big confusion people are making, and this is why words are important, right? Is there's a big confusion going on
Mhm.
between luxury versus affordability. And definitely over time, over the 54-year history, there was a point where gaming was not something affordable to everyone at scale. And then there was a period of time where it became affordable to lots of people at scale. And then there was a third phase where prices were, I think, deliberately kept flattened in order to get more people right into the life raft. And now there's a fourth stage, right? We're now in the Jurassic period where things are becoming not affordable. Now, the thing that is consistent across all four of those phases is gaming has been a luxury item. Just because something is affordable or not affordable does not mean it is not a luxury item. Like that's not the definition. Right? Again, learn your words. The Merriam-Webster account has been really great this week.
Well, I mean,
The
but that's
things it's been tweeting out.
I think that's the great point, though. I think that's the confusion, right? Affordability versus luxury. And you're right. Like if you look up the definition of a luxury good, again, non-essential, high price item or service, something that offers superior quality, static, exclusivity. It's often bought for pleasure, status, or self-reward. I mean, those are that is a definition of luxury good. And console gaming in general, or gaming on consoles and PCs, um, it fit that description.
Yeah. And look, if you want to get mad because things are no longer affordable, that's okay. I'm not gonna fight you that much about it. I'm gonna point some things out to you, but I'm not gonna fight you about it. It's never my objective to tell you how you should feel. You can feel however you want.
Yeah.
What I am gonna tackle you at the shoestrings about is, in an effort for you to justify you being mad, you deciding that you're gonna twist the definition of words commonly accepted with definitions in the English language.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what we're not gonna do. So we're not
Yeah,
going
I
to say
mean,
because something was affordable, it wasn't a luxury item, right?
yeah, no, yeah.
Because the fact, and I said this last night, like a lot of this, when I get around to unpacking the entirety of this theory, right, a part of this theory, right, is just like quite frankness that like there's some people that I'm not sympathetic about, because the fact of the matter is that there are people who have been getting squeezed and whom gaming has never been affordable for, and so now that it's catching up to you, I'm not necessarily sympathetic about it because you weren't sympathetic to the people that were being squeezed out while
Mm,
you were having your fun.
mm-hmm.
So this is just a bow wave, and the bow wave is moving, and that's just a economic fact of the world. And we need to deal with it, and everybody's going to deal with it differently. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to entertain that. Like I said, we're just going to change the definition of words just because we're salty.
Well, that's more or less what was happening, right? But I even and I didn't really get into this on the Twitter post, but outside of just the cost, right? How expensive software is, how expensive historically, sorry, how expensive historically software has been, hardware. And yes, I know somebody said, oh, but other generations, the cost of console prices have gone down. Yes, that is true. But even with that upfront cost, it being cheaper than the cost of the console at launch, there's still you are still right. There's still continuous spending that's happening. It's not just a one-time buy. I think that's important. A lot of people just, for whatever reason, seem to forget that. Like new games, right? New game releases, AAA games, all those things are often priced at a premium price point, whether it's $50, $60, $70. And I think at some point we're going to hit 80. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in GTA 6. Extra controllers, accessories. I mean, I remember um, for a while, I think consoles, correct me if I'm wrong here, Logic, I think like the NES may have shipped with like one controller and you'd have to buy a second one. I think that's the case now too. With the current gen consoles, right? You get your one complimentary controller, then you got to buy a second one. Again, online services. Hell, we get charged for multiplayer and cloud saves on console gaming, right? So there's like this sustained financial commitment. It's like it's not like I use the analogy of going out and buying Ferragamo's. Um, with a Ferragamo was a one-off purchase, but this isn't. A continue like you are continually spending money throughout the generation. And also logic, I'm gonna go on a rant here, right? Like, what do we say? Remember we talked about discretionary purchases? I think we talked about that today, right? Um, like there are a lot of people that are buying these consoles after figuring out like, okay, what is my like I've paid my bills, right? I put money away for a rainy day, whatever the case is. What does my discretionary budget look like? Can I go out and buy I mean, I live this, right? In between my 30/70 and 50/80 purchase. Logic, how long did I hold on? I mean, I think you and I were kind of having I think I've had conversations with you the last year or so about upgrading PC, right?
Yeah, I mean, you held on to it for 4 years.
Yeah, but why did I hold on to it for 4 years? I mean, because there were other things that I needed to take care of. There were other things I needed to prioritize, right? There are the things that essentials, the things that my family needed, and not because I couldn't go out and do it, but like I remember I would tell you, logic, shit, like I'm doing travel baseball now. It's like $2,000 right there. you know, I've got to pay $400 for a uniform. I've got to pay $400 for a baseball bat, which turned out to be more than that. Um, but like there's other added costs that people don't talk about. I think logic with console gaming, right? Like how many of us logic it's funny like you and I were talking about monitors when I bought when I bought the 5080. The monitor doesn't come with your PC, right? We have these high-end console devices now that take advantage of things like VRR, HDR, right? High refresh rates on TV sets. And so now not only are you potentially buying a console, but you're also buying a TV now or a monitor if you play, your console games on a monitor, right? That allow you to take advantage of some of those features that a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X provides you. Like, I mean, how many of us have went out and bought OLED TVs when LG included VRR and G-Sync and free and FreeSync support? I mean, I know I did. And that was I don't know, I forget how much I paid at the time. I think my PC well, not my PC. I also think my TV maybe 4 or 5 years old, but I think at the time it was probably like it's 2,200 maybe at the time. But if I'm being honest, like I went out and bought that TV set because I wanted the best console experience that I could have. I want the best picture. I wanted a TV that supported G-Sync and FreeSync. I wanted a TV that supported VRR, that had HDR support. I mean, that was really to complement the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. So I don't know, logic. Call me crazy. Like, I don't know how much more luxury you can get than that, right? And look, I don't know about you, logic. Like, I remember, like we talked about the OG Xbox earlier. I remember I had a 56K modem, dial up internet. You know what pushed me to get broadband? Xbox Live, so I could become an Xbox Live beta tester. Excuse me, I had to sneeze here. I don't know. I just never associated like, and I think logic, the way that I mean, I remember like the way just growing up and anytime a new console would come out, it was always like marketed as this cutting edge piece of hardware that would give you the latest and greatest graphics, right? these new immersive experiences. And they were all it's the way that they would market these consoles, it seemed like a very premium product. So that's just my 2 cents. All right, I'm gonna go back to this, Logic, I know it was ranty there. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
It's up to you. Like I said, we can go through some of the stuff that I pulled together last night, or however you want to proceed.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Because I think that's I like I said, I thought it was a great discussion. Um, I think I think it'd be good to kind of go over some of those things.
Yeah, so this is mainly a discussion of affordability, right? And mainly my effort to try and kind of define how things have evolved. I'll say at least here in America. And then you can have arguments about, whether or not things look that way outside of America, but, I don't live outside of America, or at least not permanently. So it's mainly a discussion of how things have evolved in America, why gaming was not accessible to people in the early stages of the hobby, in the first kind of 20 years of the industry's existence, why the inflection point started to occur in the 90s, why there was carriage through um, into the 2000s, defining this thing that I call the great age of affordability in gaming from 2005 to 2020, why that existed, and then what's occurring now. Um, and again, BRAP, we can off ramp at any of those points, or dig deeper on something if you want. So I think the first thing that I want to talk about is, well, actually, when I answer one question. So Chris Coleman, and Chris, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't have the perspective that you have, and I want to kind of level set this before we get into this discussion. So he mentions, what's considered a luxury in modern society. The standards change as society grows, else most things we use count as a luxury once people only need shelter, food, and sleep, reproducing to live. My stance is no, those things don't change. Maslow's hierarchy of needs don't change. Whether you're a caveman or a spaceman living in the year 2099, at the end of the day, your basic foundational needs are food, shelter, warmth, clothing. Those don't change. Now, what does change is affordability. And so today, a lot of people have microwaves. But a microwave, a lot of people in America have microwaves. But a microwave is still a luxury item. If you go to Africa, or you go to areas of APAC, microwaves aren't as prevalent in poor societies and civilizations. It's not a basic need that's given to you. There are areas in Russia where that's not a normative item in a household. So luxury items are still luxury items. A great example is a fire pit. Fire pit's not very expensive. It's probably less than like $100, 150 max for a really nice one. That's still a luxury item. It's not a basic essential need that a person has. And in fact, having it actually doesn't necessarily meet somebody's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I can go and spend $150, and this is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about gaming, right? Because people can go out and buy a console and still not have a reliable vehicle to get to work, or still not having the clothing that they need, right, to be presentable in the workplace. And so that's an irresponsible allocation of your funds in that instance, because you're not taking care of your Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I don't think that those things change. My Star Trek example, right, is the replicator. The replicator technology does a great thing. It eliminates all hunger, because now food can just be created. There's no reason for anyone to ever starve. But the Prime Directive disallows you from giving the replicator technology to non-advanced civilizations. Why? Because it totally upsets their economy and their approach to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It becomes a thing that people will hold on to and not give to everyone. So these are some of my examples of, in the Star Trek is just my funny anecdote. But these are some examples of like things that are always and consistently luxuries, no matter what. That doesn't change. What changes is the affordability of them. And a great example is the mobile phone. We have done things within society, within our socioeconomic framework and structure, to as much as possible allow everyone to have a mobile phone, because we have adjudicated as a society that that is a basic need that people need to have. So I think the first place I want to start is the notion of the definition of disposable versus discretionary income, because this is the thing that we screw up in this conversation, including myself. I've been screwing it up for years. But disposable income is your take-home pay, right? So it's your income minus taxes, and it's really minus taxes and any other kind of mandatory deduction that comes along with it. I'll go ahead and include 401k in there because that's a matter of savings, and that is a slightly different wedge. But includes taking out of things, again, in America, of things like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, state taxes, things like that. After that, you then have your discretionary income. So gaming does not come directly out of disposable income. It doesn't come off the top. After you get disposable income, there are then things that you have to do, and there's an additional deduction, because then you have to pay for electricity, heat, your mortgage, your rent. You have to pay for basic minimum maintenance for your vehicle, at least. There are responsibilities that you have as an adult of things that have to get done. And so once those things are done, then you have the remainder of your discretionary income, and that's your stuff that you can use for gaming. So again, to support the notion that gaming is in fact a luxury, gaming doesn't come out of those mandatory expenses that you that come directly out of your pay before you even see it, and it doesn't come out of that second tier of mandatory expenses that you have to pay. Granted, you have some choice in how much you pay to a certain extent. You can choose not to run your air conditioning, not to run your heat. You can choose to have a cheaper car. You can choose to take public transportation. You can choose to live in such close proximity to work that you don't need any transportation at all. But you have some income that has to go towards making sure you can get to work in general. And you have certain things that are a minimum that you have to pay for. So one thing we should make sure that we get straight is disposable versus discretionary income. So I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of what has happened with income in this country. From 1964 to 2026, right, is the ultimate conclusion to all of these arguments that gaming doesn't need lower middle income gamers to survive. No, that's a discussion point, Kev, and we're definitely going to get to that point. That is less of the discussion, because that's something that the suppliers have to figure out. The discussion is mostly around what has been going on the buyer side. But we're definitely going to get to a point where we talk about what I think at least was going to happen on the supplier side and across the market from a 360-degree perspective. Okay, so from 1964 to 2026, the average American household's nominal discretionary income has increased significantly, but its growth in real purchasing power has been uneven and heavily impacted by a widening income gap and soaring costs for housing, healthcare, and education. While the median household has roughly $19,000 to $20,000 more in inflation-adjusted income today compared to 1970, the personal savings rate has generally declined from the 1960s, indicating a higher proportion of income is spent. Median family income in 1964 was approximately $6,600, which is roughly $65,000 in an adjusted 2024 dollars. By 2023, the median household income rose to $80,730, so about $81K. Again, median household income. Shift in spending. In 1960, consumers spent about 17% of their disposable income on food. By 2019, this dropped to 9.5%. So again, things have evolved within our socioeconomic system that have resulted in the hit on food up through 2019, and I get that has reversed slightly pandemic and post-pandemic. But by and large, the cost that has been coming out of people's discretionary funds to pay for food has decreased, freeing up income for people to use for luxury items. As of early 2026, real disposable personal income per capita has reached over 53K. The average personal savings rate was 4.6%. And like I said, I don't want to get too much into savings. But here's so here's one of the big kickers. Since the late 1960s, the top quintile of households has experienced over 130% real income growth, while the bottom quintile has seen roughly 50% growth. And so, Kevin, this starts to get at the question that you're asking, which is gaming doesn't need lower middle income gamers to survive. The fact of the matter is that there has been a widening gap between the 1960s up until now on the wealth inequity in this country, where people in the upper income bands have been benefiting more so from the increasing wealth of the country than people in what is officially calculated as the middle class. And this has resulted in one of the swirls, one of the contradictory factors that have been going on in the gaming industry, which is that the gaming industry has been very much largely supported and has continued to spend as a benefactor of people who are upper income. When we talk about the statistics that NPD has had, that Circana has had, and found the median incomes of the people who continue to spend in the gaming industry, those are households that are in excess of what is formally calculated as middle class in this country. And so that leads to, right, and so if Circana knows this and we know this, the industry knows this, right? And so the industry, therefore, is making choices, bets, and gambles based on an awareness of those factors. And obviously, we've had a significant increase, right, in the rise of dual income households in this country from 1964 till today. So let's talk about a little bit about what middle class is technically. Being middle class generally means having a household income that is 2/3 to double the median. So we said that the median household income in this country is 81K. So that means roughly what analysts use and what the economic bureaus use for middle class range in this country right now is 50K to 150K annually, depending on location. It is characterized by financial stability, the ability to afford moderate luxuries, vacations and dining out, and reliance on credit for major assets like homes and cars. Okay, so while definitions vary, in 2023, the national middle class household income was generally defined between 53.7K and 161K. This definition shifts a little bit based on location and household size. But the key characteristics of the middle class are they have the ability to save for retirement and handle unexpected expenses. It often includes individuals with college degrees or those in professional or salaried roles. Consumer habits, access to quality healthcare, homeowners or aspiring homeowners, and the ability to afford amenities. But this is also the class that is part of what I call the great squeeze that has been going on. So we go back to the earlier fact that I talked about how it is people who are upper income, who are above the band of what we define as middle class by that definition that I just read, who have experienced a 150% right income gain, while the middle class has only experienced 50%. The middle class has faced a contraction since the 1970s, largely due to rising costs for housing, healthcare, and education, exceeding wage growth. While six-figure incomes were once firmly upper middle class, they are increasingly becoming the standard for middle class status in many U.S. states. One of the things I want to talk about then is so that pins that contractionary state in that split of wealth inequity in this country between the upper income and middle class comparatively. I want to talk about one of the other things that was going on in the 1970s, which was the Great Stagflation. So the stagflation of the 1970s was a decade-long economic crisis defined by the worst of both worlds: stagnant economic growth and high unemployment occurring simultaneously with rapidly rising inflation. There are many analysts today, and this is my own salt and pepper that I'm adding in here, but there are many analysts today who think that we are heading towards a stagflation. I've talked a lot about how what has been going on since the pandemic is that we are in a rich recession, which again refers back to that earlier statistic that I talked about, that the fact is that people who are upper income and outside and above the band of middle class fared better through the recession than a lot of people in the middle class, and especially better than the people who were in the lower middle class, who are down at that 2/3 of the median household income. Back to stagflation, this phenomenon shattered the long-held Phillips curve theory that inflation and unemployment always moved in opposite directions. Key things that drove the stagflation crisis of the 1970s: the energy crisis. Boy, what does that sound like? That's going on today.
Yeah, I was going to say today. I mean, I said that earlier. There's a lot of trickle down to some of the stuff that's going on with rising costs of oil and gas. But yeah, go ahead, Logic.
No, absolutely. I'll go ahead and put a spike in about what's going on with the energy crisis that, again, lots of people don't realize because it doesn't get talked about in the gaming conversation. Gas prices,
it should,
yeah, gas prices per barrel. So the benchmark gas price, which is Brent crude, which is a North Atlantic crude that is drilled for offshore, and so it's kind of looked at in finance as the benchmark for crude oil pricing, due to a lot of different factors. It's drilled for offshore, and so it's consistently shipped internationally, and not used really locally because there is no local to where it's being drilled. The consistency of it is a good kind of average expectation of what like crude oil should be in order to maintain a median refinement cost thereafter after receiving. So Brent crude so in the month of March has increased by 55% per barrel. There are expectations that in the month of April that the benchmark cost for crude oil is going to exceed $150 per barrel. And we talk about the Strait of Hormuz, right? With a lot of these things, with market corrections, there are these inflection points where if there's bad for a certain period of time, that bad is recoverable. But once that bad has been going on for an extended period of time, it hits this cliff where recovery from that can take months to years. So that's part of the swirl in the dynamic that's going on in the world today. Things that again go back to things that drove the stagflation crisis of the 1970s, end of the gold standard, government spending. Again, how does that sound similar to things that are going on today? And wage price spirals. And so we have a thing where things have been moving north in terms of prices, like we're seeing in gaming, but with other associated things like fuel and food. And we don't necessarily see the average wage keeping pace with that. The severity of the error is often measured by this thing that we call the misery index, the sum of the inflation and unemployment rates. Inflation peaks. U.S. inflation jumped from roughly 3% in 1972 to a record 13.5% in 1980. Unemployment, the economy suffered 3 severe recessions between 1973 and 1982, with unemployment eventually peaking at 10.8% in 1982. And the standard of living, real wages stagnated and purchasing power eroded, leading to a marked decline in economic confidence. So lots of those things are factors that are very similar to what we see going on today and are part of the swirl that's impacting what people perceive as affordability in gaming. A few other things that were going on right in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. Arcade traffic revenue in the U.S. was at its peak in 1981 and 1982, marking the height of the golden age of arcades. During 1981, arcades generated an estimated $5 billion to $8 billion in revenue, with games earning more than movies and popular music combined. I note that because, of course, 1981 and 1982 were, of course, the years preceding the great North American video game market crash.
E.T.
Yep. So just before that, we were at peak of arcade traffic, and we didn't really have. I mean, we had a home console market, but it was very much kind of in its infancy. But also there were breaks to it, right? Because rather than make the long-term investment in a durable good that had to be brought into the home, people would often just take their kids to arcades. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about then is back then, we also didn't have, in addition to just not having as many dual income households, we had many single income households. It also wasn't yet prevalent for there to necessarily be like the mass propagation of televisions in the household.
Mhm.
So, you typically had one TV that was like the central entertainment place that kind of replaced the fireplace right over time. Replaced the radio over time. I think we were just hitting the point where there were maybe 2 televisions in a household, but there weren't dedicated televisions where you would go and hook a video game console up to in mass scale.
Logic, I think you've kind of rained on Kevin George's parade here. He said pretty bleak future. As you described some of the, no, no, I'm joking, but I think it's and I didn't mean to interrupt Logic, but I think it's important to understand this, right? And I say this for myself, like I look at these things as a consumer because for me, and I go back to my PC purchase, right? You and I've talked about the increased price in RAM, right? Because of the AI boom. So I factor that into my purchasing decision. I look at, based on oil and gas, disruptions in the supply chain, believe it or not, like a lot of people don't realize this, that you look at um, oil and gas, right? Like gas is used to do what, right? It's used for transportation, to ship products to stores, things like that. Oil's used for manufacturing plastics, components. Again, I talked about like shipping parts, finished products worldwide. Like all those things consume energy, right? Oil. It's so I don't think people realize, and maybe they do. I don't know. But I'm in the impression people don't realize that. Like, yeah, those things trickle down when the cost of those things increase in terms of manufacturing logistics, like those get passed down to the consumer. And I almost feel like we're kind of in a perfect storm of things where we have the AI boom, which has caused an increase in prices in RAM. We have the tariffs here in the U.S. We have the increase of energy that's obviously impacting the cost of goods, and actually, believe it or not, the cost of or having some kind of impact to the video game industry as well. So, but I look at those things, Logic, and I think about those things as I'm looking to maybe make purchases like I did with my 5080, my PC, because I'll say, okay, well, if these things are happening, like, is now a time for me, if I'm thinking about buying a PC, is now a time for me to buy it because I who knows? I mean, oil and gas, like you said, oil's predicted to go up in April this month. I forgot the number you gave. Maybe it was 150 a barrel.
Yeah, north of that. Yeah.
North of that. So you got to imagine that's going to further impact the cost of goods and things like that. So those are things that I look at as a consumer. Okay, like, is now the time for me to pull the trigger because I don't know, what's going to happen. And I think maybe potentially I may have timed the purchase of this PC perfectly. Because of some of these things that are happening right now. But I just wanted to just mention that because I think it's important to take that into, but you kind of put that in perspective a little bit as a consumer, like of how these things impact us when we're out buying goods and things. So go ahead, Logic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit now about the socioeconomic evolution in the United States from the 1960s to the 1990s, right, to start. So the reason that I started looking at things in 1964, right, and I gave that range originally, 1964 to 2026, is because in 1964, you have the signing into law of the Equal Opportunity Act. In 1965, you have the signing into law of increased federal grants, or I should say federal funding for HBCUs. Around in the same time period, you have the resolution of I want to call it rapprochement, but it wasn't the rapprochement. I forget or maybe it was a rapprochement. But you have Nixon kind of making peace with China, so to speak. So you have the stage set for this increasing number of people who are going to be given the potential to move into higher socioeconomic classes via education, via an attempt to start leveling the playing field in the workplace. And one thing that I want to make sure people understand is that playing field has not been leveled yet. There's still a lot of work to do. There is still a great amount of inequity in the workplace. I have been exposed to that and suffered for it, despite the fact that I've also been able to do quite well, but I've not been immune to it. So this is not at all a discussion to say that, hey, everything has been fixed and everything has been corrected right from the great lopsidedness of pre-Civil War times in the United States. But those are two major significant historical events that occurred. So at that point, you have African Americans and you have women, because it's both a race and a gender issue, who saw an increased point in going to achieve levels of higher education to allow themselves to move out into the workforce. Because remember, at this time, you don't have minorities in great numbers in management positions in the professional workplace. You don't have women in managerial positions and upper salary earning positions within the workplace. You start that boat sailing downriver in the mid 1960s, and it takes a long time, right, to make significant threshold shifts, which is why we're talking about the period of time from the 1960s to the 1990s. Let's talk about some other things that go along with that. So you have an increase. You have the start of an evolution. Again, we're talking about a 30-year time period. You have the start of an evolution of dual income owners in households, being part of the cause of that net rise in disposable income and discretionary income, because you now have two earners. You now don't have a woman who is always at home household maintainer, right? You have other things that you see happen in society. You have the rise of the daycare industry and increased proliferation of daycare. Why? Because now both parents are in the home. You have the whole period that we talk about. If you were a kid who grew up, if you were a Gen Xer and you were the latchkey generation, and that's because you had both parents going and earning. You still don't have equity during those times because, again, particularly for women can go out and get jobs, but they're not necessarily, they don't necessarily have a promotion path. If you have the double whammy of being an African American and a woman, you're able to go out and gain a job, but you are nowhere positioned in a place where you can expect to be promoted into higher salary earning bands. On top of that, even though that potential and that opportunity is there, you're not in a position where you're going to go and take a employer to court and win a case that you are not being paid commensurate pay, right, with your white male coworkers. So again, long way to go, but we have the start of the boat sailing downriver. I'm not going to dig into the Pew reports. There were a couple of Pew reports that I pulled, but the Pew reports basically corroborate this notion that we have this separating gap, and that's really more of a discussion of 2000s to 2020s, this separation of gap between upper income people and middle class. But that evolution, like I said, it gets things started, but in the 1960s, you still have many African American households who are, people are going to college, but they're literally first generation of people going to college. You have those graduates coming out into the field in the 70s. You have people maybe starting to get promoted to the managerial ranks in the mid 70s. You have the start of the gaming. You have the start of the gaming industry, but you don't necessarily have those people making the income and powering them to go get luxury items that are at that point kind of well outside, right, the consideration of the luxury items that are commensurate with the American lifestyle. So I think so. What I'm saying is you still have a long way to go before gaming really starts picking up traction towards becoming mainstream. As you get into the 80s, you start to get into second generation, right? And then as you get into the 90s, you get into the third generation of people who are in those socioeconomic spaces, who are adding to the total amount of people who are earning in the country and gaining disposable income and discretionary income that allows them to allocate more and more to luxury purchases. As you start getting to the 90s, you start having increased console penetration in homes.
Logic. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
A quick question. Something I was just thinking about here. So we see an increase in dual incomes in households now, right? Would you say that that is one of the reasons why we saw an increase in the 90s of more households, or an increase in console adoption in households because there's that dual income now?
Yeah, absolutely. But in addition
Yeah.
to that, you also have the latchkey generation.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yep, yeah.
So, right, leading to a societal force that looks towards,
Mhm.
kids being occupied, right, with doing things when, there's when their parents aren't home.
Yep.
So, and you talk about, you talk about the comment Chris Dring just recently made, right, where the demographics of the console industry as you get into the 90s are very simple. They are kids and teenagers. So again, you go back to the progression and the evolution of people going to college. Yes, those people are going to college. Yes, they're earning. Still takes a while for those people to get promoted, those people to earn the salaries, those people to then have children who would eventually be part of that demographic where they would be console consumers, right, driving that console consumption. So my point is that 20, 30-year evolution culminates in a cresting bow wave in the 1990s. And so I think a lot of times there's this thought that, well, in fact, like lots of the content creators don't even talk about the time period of the 1990s and note how remarkable it was, because for some reason I don't know why. Maybe they don't get it or whatever, but or maybe they seem to be overly focused on PlayStation. Yes, we did have the introduction of the PlayStation, but two things kind of make that time period a severe line of demarcation in a shift in what's going on in the industry. We had the North American video game market crash of 1983, which lasted about 3 years in this country. And then you have the reintroduction of the console market by way primarily of Nintendo, followed by Sega. We have a two platform, two console market for about a decade. And then you get the PlayStation introduced, and you finally have a third platform. So prior to that, there was no third platform. And we don't know that the market would have supported a third platform. In the 1990s, you do, but you not only have the introduction of PlayStation, the key thing that gets missed by a lot of people in the discussion is that we also have 5 other platforms that come into being in that time period. They last for a very short time. Again, there's a lot of this. I need to take this down and put it on a graph and compare it to the eras of the dinosaurs, because I feel like there are some similarities there, right? But we have these other five platforms which come into existence and which for a time the market bears, albeit very, very short. But we had Neo Geo, TurboGrafx, 3DO, Philips CDI, and the Atari Jaguar. And if you think about it, there was never a time up until now, there was never a time where the market really bore that number of platforms. But that is because we had a widespreading distribution, a very broad distribution of an addressable market that hadn't before existed because of this culmination of things that got kicked off in the mid 60s and the 3 decades of evolution that it took for those forces to kind of amass in a way that they would allow that market to be born. So we have we have this broad addressable base in the 1990s. We have these socioeconomic things that evolved. There's a bit of, the Cosby Show stuff that goes in here, but I won't get into that tonight as well. But then we matriculate through that in the 1990s, and then we get into the 2000s, into this era that I call the great age of affordability in the gaming market from 2005 to 2020. The gaming industry is aware of this broad reaching, increased size addressable market that's now available for video games. And the market makes a concerted effort to keep prices flattened. We've talked about this for years, quite honestly. At least, just talking about software, we have a historical trend from 1972 through 2005 where gaming prices increase. And I'm talking about the stock gaming prices. I'm not talking about these special cartridges with the additional ROM or additional chips or a battery in it, these $80 or $90 cartridges, right? But I'm talking about the baseline median SKU for video games has increased by roughly $10 every 8 to 12 years through the course of video game industry history up until 2005. From 2005 to 2020, obviously, because now we're getting into the point where people who probably listen to the show were alive and we're actually starting the game. From 2005 to 2020, you have the industry make a concerted effort to keep prices flat. on software at $60. You also have very little movement in really the hardware. So you have the introduction of console generations, what I think it's 7 and 8, that were roughly the same price, right, for entry level consoles. You had some higher level SKUs that were $100 more. You had some platforms that did increase by $100, but it was $100, right? It wasn't look. We've just increased prices on one SKU $150, and we just had the PlayStation 5 Pro that debuted at $250 over what its predecessor did. So we've had, just in the last 5 years, we've had much more movement in price increases in hardware, right, in a 5-year time period, and this generation, than we had across 2 generations from 2005 to 2020. And that's why I talk about that being the great age of affordability in gaming. It is, unfortunately, right, potentially, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what your optic is, it is a time period that typifies a normalized state of being in the gaming industry for a lot of gamers. That, unfortunately, this is where I say unfortunately, if you don't have historical context of the entirety of the gaming industry timeline, then you've maybe been falsely led, and you've probably also been falsely influenced by content creators to believe that is the norm.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that necessarily is. So my point of this kind of long discussion, right, is to kind of go through the history and go through the chronology and go through the other things that are happening around the gaming industry. Talk about how society, at least in America, has evolved and how the affordability of gaming has changed. Why that great age of affordability, how it paints a certain picture for people, but how things made gaming not as affordable before, and how it may potentially be making them not as affordable now. Now the thing to pack into that is, okay, what does the future look like? The future may potentially look like gaming's not going to be affordable for some people. And the key thing that I want to mention too is just because a tier of a luxury market is not affordable for everyone doesn't mean it's not accessible. So I think there's this notion, it seems to be this agenda that is going on that says, if the next generation consoles come out at a certain price, then certain people are going to be priced out of gaming. And it's a very binary statement, and it's like universally. And I'm like, we have a really great example of the PC market. Because in the PC market, there are those of us who are on RTX 5000s. And there are lots of people on RTX 4000s, 3000s, 2000s, 1000s.
Some of us are on 5080s, I might add, but yeah.
And despite that state of affairs, that did not keep Capcom from making a beautiful Resident Evil game. Resident Evil game with ray tracing and path tracing. Despite that state of affairs, that didn't prevent id from coming out with Doom: The Dark Ages, which makes ray tracing mandatory. So cross-generationality is something that we've been dealing with in the PC space forever, and quite frankly, now the consoles have been dealing with it for the greater part of a generation. So it is potentially a completely acceptable state for there to be cross-generationality as a standard in the console space next generation. Which
Logic, I think that's going to happen. I think that, and so when people talk about console gaming, I've seen a lot of people like the more popular YouTube title now is PlayStation 6 $1,000 question mark. Everyone's jumped to the PS6 being $1,000. I don't personally think it's going to be $1,000. I think it probably hovers around the 600, 650 range. I don't see consoles being $500. And I suspect, and the reason why I suspect they'll probably be $600, Logic, and I brought this up early in the show. I don't think, Logic, and this is why I brought up the historical perspective, right? And why I wanted to have this conversation with you. And you providing that historical perspective in wage growth in this country. I suspect that, yes, people will be priced out. There will be some people priced out. But I imagine, Logic, that this thing, console gaming, even the PlayStation 5, and yeah, obviously there's going to be some kind of drop. I think this thing is still going to I think consoles are still going to sell. They are, and I say that because I mean, and this is why I brought up that historical perspective. You know that a Nintendo Entertainment System in 1985 was $200. It's about $607 today. PlayStation in 1995 was 300, roughly $641 today. Now, granted, I understand consoles got cheaper, but my point is that people still did go out and buy those consoles. People even buying consoles at the middle or post launch. Yes, they got cheaper consoles, but they were still investing in those ecosystems. They're still buying peripherals. They're still buying games. Again, like I said earlier, it wasn't a one-off. So I suspect, Logic, that while there's going to be a drop-off, and unfortunately, yes, people will be priced out, and that sucks. I think that the console business is still going to do its thing. It's still going to carry on. It's still going to PlayStation and Xbox or Nintendo are still going to sell consoles. I keep thinking about what Matt Piscatella said about console gaming during during this inflationary period post COVID, where I forget what he said. He was kind of surprised, I think, by the fact that I think the gaming industry more or less, I think, kind of beat his own expectations of what he thought spend was going to be. But a lot of that was driven by people in that higher income bracket. So I think that just based on some of the historical data trends or whatever that we see here, that console gaming is just going to continue to hum along and do its thing. I don't think there's going to be. I've seen people say, "Oh, this is going to lead to a big crash." I personally don't see that based on what we've seen in previous console generations. And that's why I brought up that historical perspective to kind of give people an idea, and also to drive home the point that one, it's always been a luxury item, but also drive on the point too that maybe, hopefully, get people thinking about the idea that while these devices are $600, technically they've been $600 before, and even then, they still sold, and they still sold well, and they survived. That's my broader point, is that they survived.
Yeah, I don't think I'm as bullish as you are.
Yeah.
I think, I can't remember if I read it out on this show last time or what, but I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago, I think, that talked about that there's not an acknowledgement that, in conjunction with all of this other information that I read tonight, that there's not this acknowledgement that gaming has been on a quasi perpetual bubble for the last 5 years. And if you back off, 2 to 4 years, right, as run up, it's really been since about 2016. That really, it's been that factor, right? That factor that it is really the upper income bands that are really giving the carry for the industry, and that there are multiple fault points, right, in this McMansion that's been built, right, that could come crashing down at any one point. And that may not lead to an over, like, this notion of a crash, right, in terms of like the Great North American crash of 1983, but it could lead to a great destabilization. Some of those I think will be good. I think that there is going to be some bloodletting, because I think things are going to progress that aren't just the gaming industry, but a lot of the other economic data that I talked about. Like notice, in none of the economic data that I talked about, which is aggregated from my own research, but also the opinions of lots of analysts, no one is talking about a great windfall coming. No one is talking about a bull market running away on Wall Street, right? Everybody's talking about bleak times. And again, then you put that in the context of, we have been in bleak times since the pandemic, right? So what I think is there are several things that are going to be clouding the mirror, right, as we go into the next generation. You're going to have much greater cross generationality, as I talked about. And I think you're going to have much greater cross generationality with regards to, let's say, PlayStation, in terms of there's been a slow evolution of what's going on in its console base, but again, it has borne well because the people who are on the PlayStation 5 are spending. And I think there's been less spend of people on PlayStation 4, but I think next generation, you're going to have people spending on PlayStation 6, and you're going to have people continuing to spend on PlayStation 5, and PlayStation is going to need to give incentives to people who are still on the last generation hardware, I think in more ways than they did this generation, to get those people to continue spending. We already see indications that PlayStation, I think prudently, is taking a multi-SKU approach going into next generation. And they're enabling that in their development pipeline by just having a switch that you can flip to say, hey, run this game in low power mode. And the theory is at least that's for a handheld. And we've heard at least momentarily that that's potentially for different SKUs as well. I still hold that there may be this notion that you're going to see a PlayStation 6 Pro maybe sooner in the generation than we saw the PlayStation 4 Pro or PlayStation 5 Pro. But regardless, my point is the PlayStation strategy is going to shift feet just a little bit to entertain more of a deliberate multi-SKU strategy than we've seen the last couple of generations. And I think in order to do that, right, then across the entirety of the ecosystem, right, the entire gaming industry ecosystem, you're going to have software for people. And you're going to have, and I'm hoping quite honestly that it encourages, I don't think we need any more produce, but it encourages more uptake of AA and indie, because if people are on older hardware, then they don't have as much need for performance. And I'm hoping that allows them, that influences them to go consume more of those like low performance demanding titles. But my big thing that I think is going to force some type of correction, and I apologize for those of you who have heard this before, because many of you have, is that we just have way too much inventory.
Yeah, I agree.
We have a ridiculous amount of inventory.
Too many games.
It's just not sustainable, and it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense for every time a AAA studio closes, for there to be 5 new indie studios that open. Right? To add to the already 19,000 games that are being produced in an environment where since 2023 people have been talking about the evaporation of funding sources, right, coming out of non-traditional publishing pipelines. And there were the core platform owners, when they acquire studios, are then turning around and shutting them down. Look, gaming developers aren't going to like to hear it. Gamers aren't going to like to hear it. But I'm just gonna be blunt. And I say this as a senior manager and a senior engineer who's been mentoring and coaching thousands of engineers for over 20 years plus. My feeling is many of you software developers, many of you engineers in the gaming industry need to get out. You need to transition to other industries and other markets where you will have better pay, you will have a better quality of life, you will have better incentives, you will be less subject to crunch. Because you are. It's kind of like when I was a kid growing up, and like like a lot of Gen Xers, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a lawyer, right? Until I got to an age where somebody leaned over and whispered in my ear, is like, you do understand that there's millions of lawyers graduating, right? And all of them are trying to get into the legal industry, and there's not going to be enough money and salary for all of them.
Everyone's an MBA.
Yeah. Well, that was the second thing that came after, right? Yeah. Everybody wanted to be an MBA. Unfortunately, at the time I was going through grad school the first time, somebody leaned over and whispered in my ear and said, "You may not want to get an MBA."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Everyone's an MBA these days. Yeah.
So, I mean, I personally think that we are heading for a market correction.
I agree.
In terms of some things are just going to have to be bled out, because it's just not going to be sustainable.
Yeah, no, logic. I don't disagree with you on the software front. I mean, because I see it. Like, there's so many games, so many studios that closed because their game didn't sell well, right? And there's all these games, and there's only a finite time that people have, right, to play video games. And there's so many games that are vying for attention. There's games that get lost on storefronts like Steam. I think the 19,000 games, is that a Steam reference?
Yes, yeah, it is. Okay. And then it's somewhere, but it's hard to fix a number on console, but I'm just gonna ballpark it at somewhere between 5,000 and 8,500. I typically see like 7,000 supposedly, but
yeah. I mean, there's just not enough. I mean, I could see that happening. I think some of that is happening now. I think some of that's post-COVID too, right? This this big investment in gaming at the time in 2020, because there were so many people stuck at home, and this is just not gaming. This isn't just the gaming industry that went through this, but there's a lot of overhiring, a lot of overinvestment, and so some of that's still being course corrected. It's If you look at what happened at Epic last week, I think some of that is still kind of that COVID hangover, that course correction. But no, I agree, Logic. I think that we're going to see less studios. We're going to see a market correction because there is too much software. And it's funny because a lot of people will bring up, oh, well, AAA games aren't sustainable, but it's like, no, it's not just AAA games that are having challenges. I think it's across the industry, um, with just like to your point, an abundance of games and not enough people that want to play those games. And so something has to give at some point, right? And I think you bring up a great point about the challenges of smaller studios getting investment dollars to make the games they want to make. I mean, who's the studio behind Dispatch? They actually just talked about this, how they were struggling to find funding for that game. Right. So yeah, I think I'm bullish, Logic, on the console side of things because of, and I could be wrong. What happened in 1985? What happened in 1995? The cost of the cost of hardware being as expensive, right? When you adjust for inflation, um, that even then, I mean, consoles were still they were still sustainable. They were still able to sell hardware. There was still demand for hardware. Again, I'm not saying that there's not going to be any kind of um, dip in hardware sales for PlayStation, especially after this price increase. I fully expect that, but I just don't think there's going to be a crash in terms of hardware where there's just going to be, um, where we might be having a different conversation a year or 2 or 3 years from now, where it's kind of like the ET thing over again. There's just no more gaming. I don't see that.
Well, the reason I disagree with you on that,
Yeah.
to an extent, in terms of just exactly how, like the fine granular details of how it will play out. The reason I don't think it'll play out that way is because of all the stuff that I went through before, right? The
Mhm.
reason that happened is because as that was occurring, you had this broadening pool of addressable market,
Mhm.
right? But that help's not coming now. In fact,
Mhm.
that is very likely potentially to contract because you have increasing and swelling uh, education debt, right?
Mhm.
Payback for loans.
Mhm.
You have, right, this increasing thing on housing. I forget what I heard was going on with housing. I think that because of bonds, because like
Mhm.
when the war started, everybody shifted to bonds. That lasted for a very short time, so now yields are up. Yields being up tends to drive up interest rates in housing, and so housing interest rates had just dipped before the war started and gotten back to the point where they were reasonable, and now they're back up again. So you're going to have people going again into this adversarial housing market. That's going to
So
increase their overall cost of housing. So my point on like
Mhm.
why I don't think it, because I think what we're heading into is yet again an increasingly contractionary fiscal environment that's going to hit people on their ability and willingness and confidence to spend on luxury items in the face of rising prices of hardware.
Mhm.
So I think the way it's going to play out is what's going to happen. And the other piece that I wrote in the last week
Mhm.
was welcome to the suck, right, for console gamers, because I think what's going to
Well,
happen in the console space is it's going to become very PC like, and you're going to get much more solidified this notion of a tier 1, tier 2, tier
yeah.
3 gamer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point, Logic. I mean, I guess the point I'm drawing home is like I just don't see like PCs like not PCs, consoles evaporating because I've seen that argument.
Yeah,
Like this
no, I don't
like
think
this
that.
is
I think
this
it's
is the
going to look
death of
different.
consoles. I do think, like I said earlier, like people are gonna get priced out, but I think that the whales, if you will, that have been driving a majority of the spend that Matt Piscatello's talked about, I don't think those people are leaving. In fact, I think those people are continuing to spend money. They're the ones that are gonna sustain, the console industry, if you will.
They're going to stay in a big chunk of it,
Yeah, yeah.
but that 50 to 170K band, right, that's getting the squeeze, they're going to continue getting squeezed. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
one of the comments in here was
Yeah.
talking about, I mean, they use the term poor people, which I don't really like, but like
No, no,
the
no.
people who are in that lower band of the middle class, the people who are down at 50K, this universal statement, like people aren't going to get priced out. People are going to get priced out of tier 1. And so what's going to happen is when we talk about post great age of affordability, being a gamer is for the console space, right? Because right now today, kind of everyone is kind of a tier 1 gamer, right, in the console space. Yes, there's people playing on low hardware. Those people playing on past generation hardware, I'm going to contend, never really gave a shit in the first place, right? And they onboarded in the game specifically so they could play like Fortnite and PUBG, right? They weren't kind of the demographic that we're talking about. When we talk about like the Matt Piscatella demographic and the people who are buying like very small percentages, but I think those very small percentages are driving huge amounts of revenue. So we're talking about the people who are buying 1 game a month, 2 games a month, right, or more. Those people, I think, are all on, they're all on current hardware. But I think what you're going to see is increasingly you're going to see some of them not being like, those are people who are going to get priced out of tier 1 potentially. Some of them, because not all of them are that upper income band, and those people are going to stay on PlayStation 5s, stay on PlayStation 5 Pros for further into the generation than they would have in the past. And this is where I say, like, so the shift is going to occur because PlayStation is going to still provide software for those people for a longer duration. They have, and in fact, I think you and I talked about this the other day. I think the other thing that's going to be different this time around is, I think, I could be wrong, I'm trying to remember, is Nintendo still making, I can't remember, are they still making the Switch?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I can't remember. I know.
I want to. Yeah,
I know what I was surprised by was that they didn't just take it off the market, because I expected
they haven't.
So it's still, whether they're selling through remaining inventory or whatever. I think next generation PlayStation's still going to continue to make PlayStation 5s to at least to greater numbers than they continue making PlayStation 4s.
So let me ask you. So that brings it brings an interesting dynamic to the conversation here. Then I wonder then if the PS6 then, right, will be what Sony will market to, the tier 1, if you will, and the PS5, like like I wonder if the conversation becomes Sony says, hey, like, we get it, PS6, it's $650, $700, whatever, but we still have a PS5. You would imagine, hopefully by then, that the cost to manufacture the PS5 will be cheaper. Therefore, there would be a cheaper. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm probably giving Sony too much credit here that they will lower the price below 600 and it'll be 500 again. But I imagine it's going to be a cheaper option. It's going to be an option for someone who can't onboard to a PS6. And the PlayStation fans, by the way, Logic, are going to hate that. They're going to hate the fact that Ghost of Yotei, the sequel, will be playable on both PS6 and PS5. But I think that that's probably the direction they're heading, because I can't imagine that Sony's going to want to completely cut off everyone that's still on a PS5, right? I mean, there was some cross-generational support early on the generation between the PS5 and PS4. So I agree with you. I think that's going to happen. I think that's the new that is a new world for Sony now, right? Supporting and that old model of everyone's leaving their PS2 to go to their PS3. I think those days are gone. I think people are just, to your point, I think happy with, or maybe bought their PS4, PS5 for maybe 1 or 2 games, and they're just happy where they are. I could see PlayStation continue supporting the PS5 so that they're not losing the ability, I think, to monetize some of those folks who maybe aren't those tier 1. I don't want to use the word tier 1, but those people aren't. They want to monetize the people that aren't ready or aren't maybe ever going to onboard to a PS6 because it's too expensive.
Right. So you're going to be able to monetize, but what you're not going to be able to do is you're not going to be able to monetize them for hardware. Right. So because you can't monetize them for hardware, you're going to need to figure out ways to continue to monetize them for software and services.
Yeah, which is why I think that this is what's going to drive the PlayStation fans crazy, is that those guys are going to get Ghost of Yotei 2, the sequel, and it's also going to be on PS6. But I think to your earlier point, like, it's probably going to be more PC-like, right? And I think it's not going to be as impactful, right? Those people are going to complain because that's what they've been conditioned to do, because that's the clout chasing thing to do, and to be part of the club and have your homie slap you on the back so you can win the rap battle, right? But like, that's not that's not real, because as I've said, in Chrono Rig, I do see in the chat, I do appreciate that you said yes, they are continuing to sell the Switch, and the Switch got a price hike last year.
But to my mind, that's not real because, again, one of the things that I alluded to before, like the fact that PC Potato Nation is 86% of the market doesn't prevent us from getting Cyberpunk 2077, doesn't keep us from getting Doom: The Dark Ages, doesn't keep us from getting Resident Evil 9, right? So the march of technology goes on. And those people, like, even though those people like are constantly running their mouth at loud volume, like, yeah, they're on PC Potato Nation and they're on old hardware. But notice that what they always talk about is I can still play all my games. Yeah, your games are your games in your Steam backlog. They are not the cutting edge games. They are not the new games coming out every year, because we're seeing the data saying that you guys are all buying games older than 5 years old. Right? And I go to your timeline and you're not playing anything that's been sold since 2020. So you saying you're playing your games on two 1080p monitors, right, at 60 frames per second. So just stop. Right? But my point is, when we talk about consoles, and the other thing that the guys don't get on consoles who are going to complain about it is they constantly contend that the Series S has been the thing holding gaming back. And yay, verily, maybe to a certain extent. But again, I go back to, no, the thing really holding gaming back is 8 gigabyte GPUs in the PC space.
Potato Nation.
Right? So they will be fine. And they will be fine because when PlayStation is trying to figure out how they're going to deploy software, they're deploying it to the PlayStation 6, which is going to have whatever it's going to have, like 24 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes of RAM, who knows, right? And then the thing that they're also deploying it to is a thing that has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, which is still more than the 8 gigabyte GPUs that are still being sold in the PC space, right? So in that 16 gigabyte VRAM hardware target has become the mainstream big meatball, center of the bullseye, right, of the target for most game developers.
Mm-hmm.
So they will be fine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're like, end result you're going to have, and I'm going to talk primarily about PlayStation because PlayStation runs a console business that is twice the size of its competitors. PlayStation's intermix of where it's gaining revenue from is going to look very different next generation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I hate to predict doom and gloom of like ARPU is going to slip, but if they want to maintain that ARPU, they got to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if you're only sticking at 130 million MAU, and now your 130 million MAU winds up becoming a slice that looks like a third of your users are on PS6, a third of your users, well, I'll say a third of your users are on PS6, 50% of your users are on PS5, and you still have a lagging tail wagging the dog of 17% of your users are still on PlayStation 4. You got to figure out what that mix looks like in order to be able to monetize those, because Lynn saying, our intention is to continue monetizing our users. Well, now you only have users who are upper income, right, median, upper income household,
Mm-hmm.
but they're only 33% of your base. So, yes, they're probably going to continue to spend, but like, what else are you going to, like, you've already given them speakers, headsets, a PlayStation Portal, a PlayStation 5 Pro, like,
maybe
and they're not
handheld.
and they're not buying the PSVR, right? So, like, how else are you going to monetize them, Lynn? Like, I trust you, I believe you, but I just don't know what the plan is from that perspective.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
But like you said, they're going to be fine. Like, none of this is a discussion of things going like, pineapple.
Well, and that's why I'm bullish. And again, because like Nintendo was fine in 1985, right? I mean, there were some economic challenges back then. But I think the big difference, I think, to your point, and I think this is what's really going to be interesting, is cross generational support. Like, what does that look like? How does Sony? And I think it's a great point. Like, how does Sony continue to monetize people that aren't? Because you're right. Like, if you're not buying new hardware, they can't monetize you that way. So, I mean, like the only thing I can think of, like they need then how do they onboard, like the thing that I look at, like like outside of selling games, and I think you said like you can only sell so many peripherals, right, to somebody on PS5 or console. The only thing I can think of is like how do you drive more spend at the storefront, and then how do you get more people? I think the big thing for them is how do you get more people to spend on things like PlayStation Plus, right? Which is a subscription service for them, which could be reoccurring revenue, right? Monthly or yearly or annually. How do you make that more attractive to somebody who might not be inside PlayStation Plus now, right? And maybe that's a byproduct of the rising cost of software, right? If games go to $80, maybe that's the value prop now. Hey, but you know what? You're on PS5. We still have this great PS Plus service for you. It's this. It gives you this amount of games. Give it a shot. I don't know. Like that's the only other way I could see them um increasing spend, maybe inside, or for somebody who has a PS5. I think somebody had a question for you, Logic, in the chat. I don't know if you saw that. They are looking at the Apple model subscription service and ecosystem of portable handheld console and accessories. Potato. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with Potato Nation being worse than the poor, but
But the Apple model. Yeah, I mean, that's I don't know if I've considered all of like the subscription service and ecosystem part of it, but definitely from the SKU part of it, because I mentioned this to you earlier this week, right? That you look at the Apple model, and very often when Apple introduces like the new model, they still keep the last model SKU in production. So when they first flipped to Apple Silicon, right, they continue to sell one MacBook Pro SKU of Intel. And very often, when they put they'll debut the iPhone 18, but one SKU of the iPhone 17 will still be in production. So I think that's a little bit of kind of what we're looking at, right? Slightly different from that, but I see that similar favor. It's just that I think the numbers are going to be bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have your PS6 would be like your new Apple. What is it? Apple. What's the Apple phone they're on now? Is it the 17?
They're on the 17.
Yeah,
yeah, but the huge difference, right? The huge difference, right? Yeah. I think the comparison's a little limited, but like the huge difference is what happens with Apple is when Apple does that, it's the 17 Pro Max that's the big seller, right? And so the other things, actually sell less.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, I think they're actually gonna, they're gonna experience the slow sales of the PS6. I think one of the things you mentioned was how to onboard people. It'll be interesting. I mean, I think particularly in this world where where you and I talked earlier this week, like all of the big tech companies are trying to onboard younger generations and then grow them, right, and fleet them up into adults that stay in their ecosystem. I think that Trojan horse is the handheld. So it'll be interesting to see what price the handheld comes out at, because maybe that's the thing that you want to make comparatively inexpensive, so that people take that handheld and put it in the hands of kids. Again, going back to these people who argue that kids today only want to play on phones and tablets, I'm like, guys, it's not because phones and tablets are amazing, right? It's not because they're providing amazing gaming experiences. It's because that child who has to fight for attention, has to fight for their own sense of being, has to fight for their own property, is being given a device that they don't have to fight for TV time, right? They don't have to fight siblings. They don't have to fight adults. They don't have to encounter, oh, well, it's your mom and I's night to watch, our soap opera or our drama or K-drama or whatever, right? Like, it's not a limited resource. It's a personal device, which is a new societal impact. Post 2010-ish, and it gives them an intensely personal device, right, that is theirs, that they can use the entire time, at least up until the parental controls limit that you set to shut that crap down at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. But that may be the way that you onboard, right, and try and get people in the ecosystem, kids in the ecosystem early, so that they grow up and become PlayStation people.
Yeah. I want to welcome Gaming Forte to the show. What's up, Forte?
What up? What up? What up? What up?
Your ears must have been burning because I was like, I wish Forte was here.
Oh no, I didn't even know you were live, and I was packing some orders for some stuff, and then I just went on YouTube and I was like, well, what videos are on? And then I saw that you were live, and then I heard y'all talking. And I was like, you know what? I'll jump in here for a second.
A Forte. So I don't know if you know this, but I finally pulled the plug. I upgraded.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
Oh Lord.
Finally upgraded. Upgraded the PC.
That's a good place to be. I mean, it probably cost you a liver, but it's a good place to be.
I mean, I don't personally. I didn't think it was too bad. About 2,500. So.
Oh man, no, it's not too bad. I mean, it's
5080.
Oh, okay, definitely. Yeah. You in there now? You in there? Congratulations! Welcome to the new revolution where gaming is going to be better for you for a little bit longer, and in the near future, you're going to need a 5090 to run, these new complex systems we got coming, and not just one, two.
Yeah. Well.
But no, man, I was just listening to y'all and was hearing y'all talking about console situations and stuff like that. And what's interesting, because you were talking about like what can they do to like bring that value that would make people want to spend more, like higher spend. Like, how do you do that?
Exactly. Yeah. Especially if they're staying on PS5, right?
Yeah. So outside of the exclusives, what's the main reason to own a console in general, in your opinion, outside of exclusives?
I think some of it is, your digital library.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of it's where your friends play.
Mm-hmm.
I want to stick my toe in the door of that, right? So exclusives to me are things that a platform owner pays for in order to keep only to themselves. But we live in an age now where there's plenty of things that are not exclusives that still go to one platform and not the other.
Yes.
So I think the close second behind exclusives is the place where the most games go.
Yeah. Yeah. For the most part. Yeah, for the most part. For me, it's like, and I hate to say this because this is the thing. There are more people. Okay, so when you think about the ecosystem in general, like these ecosystems are created in order to bring people into it, to have them spend more money inside those ecosystems so they could generate more revenue. The more people, the more active users you have, the more people that are inside your ecosystem, usually translates to you making more money because everybody that owns that console, their spend goes up exponentially when they're in your ecosystem. We're not in the same... I don't feel like, in my opinion, because I have to be very, very careful with this. In my opinion, we're not in the same bubble that we used to be in even 10 years ago or 7 years ago, where a game could just release on your platform, or just the active users on your platform like drum up so much spend that it's like inconsequential to the fact that if you don't make your own games on a consistent basis, you can like literally live off a third party. Now, I still think there is a point where that does happen with some games, but you start thinking about the spend on some of these bigger games, like Fortnite, one of the biggest games on the platform. They're already laying people off because the game's getting dry. Spend is down, considerably to what it was over a decade ago, or even up to 2 or 3 years ago. People are still playing the game, but they're not spending as much money in that game anymore. Then you go like Call of Duty, same thing. A lot of people still play it, but the amount of money that's being spent in it, it's down compared to what it used to be. And it's like the industry is trying to find that next thing that is going to bring people back up into that spend category, because if you think about what Sony's spend normally comes from the single player market with the games that they release. Pretty much the Nintendo Nintendo blueprint, release a really, really good single player game, millions of copies of it sell. If they're lucky, they get into the 10s to 15 million, copy range when it comes to those games. But now, since those games are costing so much more money to make, on top of the fact that there's less people buying and playing those type of games, it's like a double-edged sword right there. And then when you go contrast that to what Microsoft used to do, they had really good single-player games, but their whole platform was built off of multiplayer. Why Xbox Live was like the driving force for them. Like online, was the biggest spend for them. Like that's why they had so many people spending so much money. Because if you were playing on Xbox, if you were on Xbox Live, you were spending significantly more than somebody that was just a core game. Which is funny. It's crazy to think about Xbox Live core was a thing, and now Xbox Live isn't even a thing anymore. It's all under Game Pass now. But the fact that I don't know what the actual number is, but there is a huge amount of the audience that is playing games that cost them nothing. And they're also using systems that cost a lot of money to maintain. So if they're not spending the money in those systems, in those ecosystems as much as they used to no more, they're basically just eating up all of the extra bandwidth that is being used across, the network that they aren't having to pay for, because a lot of those games are free to play. So you don't need a subscription for it. So what is the benefit for those people to spend more money if they have everything that they need already? If they play Warzone and they just buy a couple of skins and then say the game is down and they don't really buy a lot, or say with Fortnite right now, the spend is down, but they're still playing the game for free. They don't have to have a subscription. So PlayStation's not getting any ancillary money for them on a month-to-month basis. And then if you contrast that with Xbox Game Pass, especially with the price of the subscription going up, even though they are working on trying to bring it back down, it's still the fact that is a barrier entry, and the people that spend the most money inside the games aren't spending as much as they used to spend anymore, but they're still getting the benefit of an ecosystem for free that a lot of people pay for. And I'm not saying you should charge people for that, but that's honestly the only way they can really bring that back up, is if they do away with the whole, the playing online it should be free because that's what it is on PC. But when you are offering a ecosystem, whereas it's built closed-in ecosystem where the only thing you're asking people to do is, play on your ecosystem, spend money in your ecosystem. If they're only playing and not spending money, then one of those two heads are broke. And how do you fix that without giving them something to want to spend money on? Now everybody's going to say that falls on the developers, that falls on the platform holders, and it absolutely does. I just don't know in the short term what they can do to get that spend back up outside of, pulling levers that most people don't want them to pull. Now, can they fix it over the course of the next year to 2 years with, consistent updates to certain games, more games like Wolverine coming out, games like the God of War game that they're making, the online game that they're making, where it could be a great hit and then it brings that spend back up? Absolutely, they can do that. But I always talk about, like, what can they do in the short term to fix an issue that's going to be a lasting term for the conceivable future, especially with the price of consoles going up too. You're almost getting to the point, I saw your title, is gaming becoming a luxury thing. Well, gaming has always kind of been that. It's just that now, for the people that like me and you and everybody else on this podcast, or even that's in the chat, it's almost at a point now where we're almost being priced out of it. You know, because I don't know too many people that's going to spend $1,000 on a console. Like, yes, there's people that will do it. I would have to like truly think about it if I really wanted to spend that type of money on a console, other than just putting money into a PC.
Forte, I got a quick question. Like, a lot of people are throwing around $1,000. How do we arrive to 1,000?
No. I'm just saying. That's just the room. I'm saying, but even $900 for a Pro. That's to me. $900 for a Pro is still Michigan 6% sales tax is 40. What is that? 40, $946.
So you're referring to the Pro then? Okay. I'm
to talk about the highest end system you could buy, and that's going to be the Pro. As of tomorrow, it will be a $900 console.
Yeah.
So I don't know too many people that are doing that, but this is the thing though. I see people in waves running out and picking up something because of FOMO. We sold out of all our Pros.
Today you did?
No, not today. No, this happened the day that it happened, the day that they announced it.
Oh, people came in the store. Okay.
Oh, dude, the day the announcement happened, I literally had like 7 or 8 Pros in my store. By Saturday, they were all gone. All of them were gone. And every last one came in with a console to trade in. And if it wasn't just one console, it was 2 or 3 consoles to pay off a Pro before the price went up. And every last one of them said it was for that main reason. And that's the power of the console, and that's the power of Sony, because I don't know too many other companies that could. I don't even know Nintendo could do that, because Nintendo, I think, is more of a mid-tier family budget console. I don't think they could get away with a $900 console. But PlayStation, as much as I ain't think nobody would, PlayStation showed me they could, because there's a lot of people out there that literally ran out and spent all their money and bought a Pro, when for the last 3 years, or a year and a half, I should say, they had the opportunity the whole time to buy it. But just because PlayStation came out and said the price is going up and the brick is going to be a completely different price today than it is tomorrow, or tomorrow than it is today, everybody ran out and got the system. So that's another way that you get spend up, because if you look at the data says it still only really costs them like $729 to manufacture a Pro. Now, we all know that these consoles operate at a loss. I mean, traditionally you're making 5% margin, maybe 2 to 3% margin on a console. So if you're still making like you're still bringing back $726 to spend on a Pro. Now you're going to be bringing in an extra $150. The margin is still there, but with the price of cost of everything going up, it just is like another lever you can pull to say, for people that want to be inside of this ecosystem, this is what the price of it's going to be. And that's going to kind of help with, revenue and stuff going forward, because they're not really losing money by doing this. It's people think that they're doing this because they have to do it. They're doing it because they can do it, because of the economy being the way it is, the economics being the way they are, the way that parts and distribution being in the way it are. Even if it wasn't like as bad as it is when it comes to a lot of this stuff, and some of it's getting better when you're talking about RAM prices and stuff starting to come down, but it's still nowhere near where it needs to be. So I just think in general, it comes back to, what are they going to do in the short term to get spend up in an ecosystem where most of the people aren't spending money? Like, they're not really buying those big games like that. They're playing a lot of free-to-play games, and those just happen. And then those free-to-play games, and even if it's not a free-to-play game, it's a game like Arc Raiders that costs $40 that you're really spending, a little bit of money in, but not a lot. And then you got games like Marathon, which, beat another drum. That game might not make it. Well, they say it's going to be here for years to come. I'll take a wait and see approach on that. So there's just a lot of different things that could be going on inside of that. And I'm just interested to see exactly how they manage that over the course of the rest of this year, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You had I can't say honestly. I can't say Forte that I'm surprised that you had a rush of people coming into trading their PS5s and PS5 Pros.
I ain't even tell you how people called
Yeah, that's
after
just
we ran
wow.
out. It was I literally thought about just answering the phone. Thanks for calling GameStop where we have no PS5 Pros.
Yeah, I'm honestly wondering. Like, I'm just wondering at this point, like if because obviously we know PS5 Pro sales are, maybe I think PS5 Pro maybe makes up what 12%, 15% of the PS5 install base. If I'm not mistaken, but I'm just wondering if PS5 Pro sales are going to fall off a cliff now that it's going to be $900. Although I've heard one of the dads on my son's travel baseball team is actually he's a big gamer. Like games on PC, has like pretty much every device you could think of, right? But he's got a friend that is on a PS4 still and is like, yeah, I'm gonna buy a PS5 Pro for GTA 6. Like, and that's the only thing he's buying it for. Because he's like, yeah, I want the best GTA 6 experience. So I'm even thinking ahead of time, like later this year. Like, I wonder what kind of impact GTA 6 is going to have on the console sales. Not specifically the PS5 Pro, but just the PS5 and
well, because you're going to have to
consoles. Yeah,
you're going to have to have one.
Yeah.
You're going to have one to play it. And guess what?
Yeah.
All of these and like I tell you, everybody knows I got rid of my Xbox early this year because there was no reason to have it with having a really good PC. The only reason I have my PlayStation still is because of Grand Theft Auto. It's not because of PlayStation exclusives, because even though they are saying they're rolling back on exclusives when it comes to their games coming to PC, I'll wait and see on that one because I think there's a lot of talking points. It could be the case. If it is, I still have my PlayStation 5, but the only main reason I have it is because I know with 100% certainty that GTA, and I don't know that with 100% certainty, but I feel it in my bones that GTA is not coming day and date to PC. So I have to have a way of playing it. So I have to keep my PlayStation for that.
Yeah. So Forte, do you also think, because we talked about this earlier, I think that you talk about like cross-generational support. And I said this earlier. I said, I think right before you joined, I said, a lot of PlayStation diehard fans are going to be upset with the idea of maybe Sony supporting, I said Ghost of Yotei 2. Obviously, that's probably not a game, but I said, they're going to be mad because Ghost of Yotei 2 probably released on PS6, but also released on PS5. And I think what Logic was saying is like they're going to probably have to support those existing. Not probably. I think they will. I think we're on agreement with that they will support PS5 consumers that aren't going to migrate to PS6 because of the cost of the PS6.
They're not going to turn off the faucet.
Yeah, exactly. And so that kind of I'm thinking that they're going to continue releasing first party games exclusives on PS5 then, and it's going to be kind of like what Logic described, kind of a PC like scenario where you have games that are going to scale based performance based on whatever hardware you have. It's probably going to be similar with the PlayStation 6, PlayStation 5. Do you think that's going to be the case too? That they're going to continue supporting both consoles, cross-channel support?
I do, but I think to an extent that it's going to be more. I do think you'll get way better versions of the game on the PS6, but I don't think you will see that huge leap until maybe halfway through the gen of PS6 where enough people can get over to the PS6 and they can start focusing mostly on that, because you can only go so far in the development lane because it's not like a PC. Now, we don't exactly know what they're doing. Like, we know that they're doing new technology with this system, so feasibly they could, but I just always go back to what's the price it is going to be, because ultimately the way that technology has been moving, I feel like it's even more beneficial to have mid-gen refreshes more than ever now, because I feel like at a certain point when a PS6 comes out, I think exactly what you just said. They're going to cater to the PS5 fan base, and if you want extra power and you want like the new features and everything, you're going to go over to the PS6 for that. And then you're just going to get a better experience on the PS6. But then 4 or 5 years in, when they do like a mid-gen refresh of the PS6 to like a Pro or something, that's when I think they should cut off the PS5, and then the PS6 will be the entry level, and then that's when you can fully take advantage of the PS6 and that generation's power, because now you're moving the goalposts further for people that want more and still having an entry point for people that want less. We already see that is kind of working now. It's just happening right now later in life because people are seeing the price of a PS5 Pro going up. Up until this point, people didn't see the benefit of it. They didn't, like, let's be for real. If they never announced the price hike of the PS5 Pro, people would not be running out to go get a PS5 Pro. They probably would have ended up with one at some point in the future because that's probably what they wanted. But since they were kind of egged and forced into a situation where they had to make the decision now, get it for, $750 or pay $900 later, now people are feeling like, okay, it's worth it for me now. But it wasn't worth it at $750. So I see that there is a ecosystem where a small upgrade to the console midway through the generation would do wonders for a lot of people, but it would also make it so the people that decided to like wait for that upgrade to happen, and when they do jump into the PS6, they're going to get a full benefit of what that generation is versus the half-baked version that we always get, like we did with the PS4. Like, we did get a pretty decent jump with the PS5, but we were still getting PS4 games three years into the generation. So I still see that being a thing until, they get back into a cycle where we're upgrading that hardware every 4 to 5 years. But I do think you're right. There is going to be a situation where games are going to be better. It's just, how are they going to implement that across generations going forward?
So I do want to push back on one thing. Before I do that,
push back, baby. I love you. Push back.
Just the question in the chat. Solomon says, "Hey, they say that Grand Theft Auto 6 might come for the Xbox Online first, then PlayStation 5 and 6 will come." So I don't recall that, but I'm pretty sure it is official statement that it is not coming day and date to PC. It is coming to consoles first, in a staggered release. It'll eventually come to PC.
So, it ain't coming to PC for at least a year.
Yeah, probably
at least a year.
So I think the one thing I want to slightly push back on is I don't think PlayStation has raised the price solely because they can. I think people, and I don't think people are only buying it because of the impending price increase. I think people are very conscious of the war. I think people are very conscious of the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. I think people don't know the numbers and statistics that I threw around earlier tonight. I think people are very, very, very conscious of the fact that they're paying an average of greater than $4 per gallon of gas at the pump, and I think they're very conscious that.
Oh, I definitely know that.
I think they're very conscious that they know that that's not going to change tomorrow, right? And I think they're very conscious that tariffs have been working against them, and the war is working against them, and the outlook is not great. And they have cause for concern that if you need to get a and I think they're very conscious of creeping higher PC component prices. Although I don't think it's at the world is ending, the end is nigh type of things with the guy with the 2 easel flipboard standing out on the corner. But I think they're conscious that if you're going to make a purchase, particularly with your tax return check either hitting or on its way soon. I think people were very conscious that now is the time to make that. And for PlayStation, like I said, I don't think they were raising the price just because they can, because Xbox raised the price and they didn't have any market reason to justify their price increase in terms of demand and people like wanting the console. I think at the end of the day, all of the vendors have had to make choices to maintain profitability. Now, again, that's in order to maintain their target. So from that perspective,
right.
It's because they can or they wanted to. But I don't think it was absent of like other
no,
things impacting them.
No, I agree with that, and I don't. And if I came off saying I think they did it because they felt like they could, no, I don't think that's the case. Like I think Nintendo releasing Mario Kart 8 at $80 is because they could. I think Zelda releasing at $70 on Switch 2 for both versions of the game is because they know they could. Those are, I know they could because they did that because they could do it, not because they had to do it.
Right.
So those two things are completely different. I just think at a certain point, just like you said, and you said it a little bit more eloquently, you said the fact that all of these different systems and these different things happening in the world contribute to the thought of that. But the bottom line is, how do we maintain profitability? How do we maintain our goal of hitting the number we want to hit in revenue or whatever that number is by the end of this year? With spend being down across the board, how do we get that money back up? And that's where I go back to the point where, well, people aren't spending as much money as they spent before, and the biggest part of your player base is the free-to-play market side of it. So if they're not spending the money, how do you get more people to spend money? Well, one way of doing that is leveraging the fact that you have a console. It does cost you a lot to produce this console, and maybe it's not something you want to do but it's something that a lever you can pull. They didn't do it because they wanted to do it. They did it because they want to say, how do we keep our projection on target? And that's not the only thing that they changed. It's going to be other things across the rest of this year. Like the fact that the Portal went up in price, is going up in price by $50. Not just the Pro went up. All these systems went up in price like that. So you're just going to see more and more things happening inside of the ecosystem other than just consoles going up. The fact that controller prices, there's another reason they're releasing all these different controllers and stuff. People don't think about it, but the fact that they're coming out with, really, really sweet looking design controllers, those controllers cost $85 a controller, which is $15 to $20 more than a basic controller. The only difference is the new one's got a glossy sheen on them. Now, does it cost $25 to build a glossy sheen on a controller? Absolutely freaking not. I know people that manufacture stuff and it don't even cost that much to put a glossy sheen on something. But that is a premium product by PlayStation, and they're going to charge you premium pricing for it. So that is another thing that they're doing in order to get spend up, not in the traditional sense, but in different ways by having you look at something and say, that's sweet, I want it. And you're going to spend them. And if the money isn't consequential to you, you're going to spend that money. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. They're not doing it because they want to do it or because they can't do it. It's just a mechanism that they're pulling in order to not fall behind in whatever their projections are for 2026 going into 2027.
Well, I think so when we talk about projections, and Bob, one thing we didn't get to do, well, maybe I'll try and cover it in 10 seconds after this. So projection-wise, I can't remember. I don't have my notes right in front of me, but as of their Q3 earnings call, they're already predicted to be, I want to say, down on revenue by the end of, because this quarter ending is the end of their fiscal year. So
yes, this quarter ending, yeah.
So they've already signaled that they are going to be down by, I want to say 10% on revenue, right, by $2 or $3 billion.
Yeah.
But their profitability rate is up in double digits, which is I think when they did their Q3 earnings call, I ran some calculations and I showed where they were basically saying they were going to end at the end of the fiscal year. So they're already going to be down 10% on revenue. They're already going to be double digits on profit. So I don't think they have to do anything to change that was already locked in right at the end of Q3.
Yep.
They have not issued guidance for FY26 yet.
Nope.
So they will do that here actually in the next few days. I can't remember where their earnings call is, but they will do that. I expect, because of the way things are right now, they're going to indicate losses, because I don't know, and I could be wrong. Because I'm answering this at the moment. I don't know what good it would do you to indicate a rosy picture with the conditions of the world and the economic market right now. I personally think it would be better to indicate a problematic and a challenging fiscal environment, and then revise upward later in the year if things actually turn that way. I don't know that I would come in betting on Taco for this earnings call, right, happening in the last few weeks, next couple of weeks. I think the market upturn that occurred out of nowhere in the final day of the month, when literally the day before we were predicting the market to end the month down and to be the worst quarter in recent history, off the strength of like the Hegseth, brief and Trump saying he's willing to end the war without opening up the Strait of Hormuz. I think that's incredibly speculative. So I don't think that that's going to carry through and continue in the earnings calls that we hear in the month of April. I think that they know that they're going to be down, and I think they're going to predict that they're going to be down. But I also then loop this back to, I think this is why PlayStation 6 is coming on time. Because I don't think in the current environment where you've raised the price on the PlayStation 5, you've got these other things that you mentioned, raising price, like I don't think you allow that state to perpetuate for another 4 years and have that be your economy. That would make zero sense to me. Right? Just to leave yourself in a perpetual backslide on old hardware with no way to turn that around. So I think part of the way that you monetize and you start moving forward again is you introduce the next console on time at the end of 2027 ish, and then I think then you have a place to reset the table and reshuffle things and kind of convey in the new with a new voice track what you expect your earning profile to look like. That you're going to have this percentage of PlayStation 6s, you're going to have this percentage of PlayStation 5s, you're going to continue producing the PlayStation 5. At that point, because you've got the new hardware out, you've got some things that you can do with the PlayStation 5. I don't necessarily know that means lowering price, but it might do a thing like I strongly suspect like the PlayStation 5 base will go away with the optical drive.
Oh, yeah.
In a world where you're producing both the 6 and the 5, maybe at that point you just produce the 5 Pro and the 5 digital. But my point is, whatever it looks like, you have an opportunity to reshuffle the deck, and you can't reshuffle the deck if you don't introduce new hardware. So I think things are going to be bad. I think they know that things are going to be bad. I think they're going to project that things are going to be bad. It will really surprise me if they project,
sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, exactly. That would be really weird to me. Particularly if the war isn't over at the time when their earnings call goes down.
Yeah. Well, I think even if it's over there, I don't think they're gonna. It's gonna be all sunshine and roses. I mean, they already cited some of the economic challenges as a reason for the price increases of the for the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro.
Yeah, definitely. If it's not over and the Strait is still closed.
Yeah.
Or definitely, even if it is over but the Strait is still closed, I think will be the big tripwire.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree, 110%. So,
you guys are some smart individuals. That's why I love y'all.
All right. Any other thoughts before we wrap up the show? It's Brap's I got to take my butt to bed because it's getting late here.
Bed, man, you act like you're 60 years old.
I feel like I'm 60 some days.
The one thing I will say this, and this is off topic.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Slow-Mo about this on the podcast last week, and I was telling him, I said, Slow-Mo, been doing this show with you for a while. I said, and he said something crazy. And I said, you know what, Slow-Mo? I love you. I can't believe I've known you for over 10 years now. And when I think about that, I was like, bro, I didn't know y'all for over 10 years now, dog. 10 years.
Who? Slow-Mo?
All y'all.
No, not 10 years.
Yeah, it has been, bro, since 2016.
Really?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Oh, yes. My goodness. That's insane.
Think about that. dog, you
Well,
know,
I mean,
when you think about the year, think about 20, like what were we doing in 2016? Like 2016,
I think you're right.
it seems like it's far away because it is far away, but it seems like it's like 2016. It's like I try to tell people when I always go back, say, reminisce about all the things you've been through because it will remind you where you came from. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, dang, 2016 is when I like 2015 is when I started listening to people in this community. And 2016, 2017 is when I really became a part of it. And I was like, bro, that was almost 10 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, I think you're right. That's crazy. I didn't
You
even
should
think
go back
about
and
it.
look at how far you should go. Next time you're doing it, go look at your BRAP, go look at your podcast, and go back and see how far it goes back. You'd be like, bro, this thing says 9 years.
No, I'll have to look at. I mean, I know Logic's been on the show for 4 or 5 years now.
I think 4 years.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's like I mean, think about it. When we did podcasts when remember Red Dead Redemption came out and everybody was talking about, oh my God, Xbox can't even make a good game to take advantage of their Xbox One X, but Rockstar can. Rockstar was the reason that Xbox One X is sold because they showed that it was a good console. And that was what, 2017, 2018? Crazy, bro. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Xbox Game Pass has been a thing since 2017, bro.
In 2016, we got the tease for Project Scorpio.
Yep, I'm trying to tell you. This is how long we all been together, man. We done been through a whole bunch of gaming news together, man. That's why I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the friendships, and even when I'm not in the podcast, I'm always actively listening to what everybody got to say because it's like we done all came real far. Now, some of the people in this community still crazy as heck, and I don't think they ever gonna change. But I got to give you your flowers, BRAP, because you always been, one of the most consistent people in the community, and I appreciate you for being who you are. And then, having Logic here with you, he came later. He wasn't part of all the crazy stuff in the beginning, but he fits right in with this conversational podcast that you do. And I just want to give you guys your flowers for that.
Oh, thank you, 14. I appreciate that, man. And certainly appreciate anytime you can join us. I miss having the regulars on, like B Money was on Friday, this past Friday. So, but definitely, no, the feelings are mutual, man. I really appreciate the friendships here and the fact I just didn't realize that it's been that long. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
I hate to ruin you guys' kumbaya moment, but BRAP, I know you're trying to get out. I gotta
cover three things
really quick.
Oh, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Finishing off E3 2016, we got Project Scorpio, Xbox Play Anywhere, first announcement.
Yep.
That was also the year Design Lab launched.
Oh, a Design Lab. Let's go.
Yeah, that's one of the dopest things that Xbox has ever done.
It is.
Going back to one of the things you mentioned, Forte. PlayStation makes so again, how do you monetize? One of the things that's I think a key ride through component of this time is that I think I have this quote right. I'm not absolutely positive. Calamari already mentioned this a couple months ago, but 10 game PlayStation makes over 50% of its revenue off of 10 games on its platform, none of which are theirs, which is one of the reasons why they've done the push to live service. But they're padded well to bear some adversity that won't last forever, but they do have some ride through capability. And the last thing I wanted to cover, BRAP, I hope I can do this in 10 seconds, but a couple of weeks ago there was the Nintendo Switch announcement of they were backing off by 2 million units of production.
2 million units of production, yeah.
So really quickly, I want to encapsulate how
Switch is dead.
How stupid that headline was, right? Because again, going back to their Q3 earnings report, right? Their guidance was that they were going to sell through 19 million units in this fiscal year. They were already at 17.4 million units. So the 19 million was kind of a gimme. So them knocking off 2 million units of production in the month of March means absolutely nothing. For this fiscal year. It starts to parlay into, okay, what is there going to be their guidance for FY26? And like I said, we have yet to see that. We should see that this month as well. But we have been predicting all along that the highly unlikely that Switch 2 is going to sell anything near the numbers of Switch 1. Probably is going to be down by at least 30 million, maybe as much as 50 million units, and you're probably going to get a 100 to 110, 120 million sell through. So seeing that glide slope is not going to match it is going to be fine. But by the same token, it's been one of the fastest selling consoles. It is still selling ahead of Switch 1 on a timed aligned basis. So we have the seasonality comparison of holiday season, but the holiday season seasonality does not time align to the actual launch timeline because Switch 2 launched 3 months later than Switch 1 did. So Switch 2 is doing just fine. Also, the notion that I've seen the misconception that Switch 2 is only selling really well in Japan, but we have data that says that's absolutely incorrect. Again, it is still selling well in the United States because most of that data concerned with the time alignment and how fast its sell-through has been NPD data, which only tracks American data. So a lot of crazy wild headlines, even going back to the thing of like, oh, this has been, Switch 2 didn't sell as well during the holiday season as Switch 1. Again, not on a time aligned basis. So just wanted to debunk that before we get out of here.
Yeah, I and just to follow up on what you just said on that, the biggest thing for me, the reason, and I do agree, I think the tail end of the Switch 2's life, I could be wrong. We all could be wrong. It could destroy that number. I just don't see that want to from people to have multiple Switches in their household. Like, I think just as many families or households will have a Switch. I just think the number of Switches in a household is going to be drastically different. Like, there was one point in my family, I had 4 Switch in my house. I only have one right now because my kids could care less. They just want to play the one I have when I have it, and when they don't even think about it. Compared to the
Switch 1 was a pandemic console. That's another thing that
it was another, and that's another thing, because people was like, wanted to get one just because they wanted everybody in the house to have something to do, so it benefited greatly from that. But let's get out of here, BRAP. I know you got to go to sleep.
Yeah, I'm old. I got to get up early.
Well, I ain't say you were old. I just said you need to go to sleep. You said that.
I know I said that. Hey, Forte, how's Slow-Mo doing, by the way?
Oh, he's doing good. Being a narcissist as always on the internet.
Oh man,
he just got his prestige master last double XP weekend on Call of Duty.
Did he really?
Yep, I was playing with him when he got it. He was like, I got it. I said, okay, good. You can stop playing this trash game.
Oh man,
he complains about that game all the time, but then he plays it. He complains about it all the time, but he plays it every day.
It's like an abusive relationship.
It is. It's just like how I was with Destiny until I stopped playing Destiny.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we got to get you two back on. I miss the back and forth. Always entertaining.
I'm always down.
We should probably jump on Halo one last time too.
You know what's funny? You say that logic.
I agree. We were talking about that the other day too.
Yeah, I just had that conversation today with the dad of my son's travel baseball team who is a hardcore gamer. I was like, hey, you know what? I need to get back on the Halo multiplayer. He's like, yeah.
My Xbox games just started working again on Steam today. So.
What?
Oh wow!
Your games just started working?
Yeah, Xbox games. Yeah,
just started working again because in December some nit went on where I was not able to sign in to my Xbox games, and so because of some other things I was doing, I ran some tests today to try and reinstall my Xbox games from Steam to see if I could sign in, and today it worked. It's actually super interesting. The guy talked about whatever VP talked before Shama took over was talking about how their deployment to other platforms was like inconsistent and they wanted to work on that. Mm-hmm. It's also super interesting, this high variance of games on Steam from Xbox that some require you to sign in and you can't play the game if you don't sign in.
Right.
And then some other ones like don't care if you sign into Xbox at all. You know, like they'll let you sign in, but if you don't like South of Midnight and Avowed, they'll let you sign in, but if you don't sign in, they don't care. But then Forza, Halo Infinite, and Microsoft Flight Simulator, like you can't even get to the settings screen without signing in.
Oh, I know about especially with Flight Sim because I was trying to do the update and it won't let you log into the game unless you do the update, and those updates are huge.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to get back into Halo Infinite again.
It's good. You should go through the campaign again. It's actually really fun if you.
No, multiplayer.
No, I'm saying if you turn your brain off, it's actually really good.
No, I don't want to live that experience again, Forte.
It was fun. I loved it. Going around and using the grappling hook. It's like one of the best things they ever did in Halos. Make the grappling hook.
No, I did not like it.
Felt like I was playing Just Cause.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, I hope.
I'm down to do that though. I'm down to play some Halo.
I can't tell if this is April Fool's or not.
Oh, you know what? Shout out to April Fools. I purposely did not look at any social media today because I did not want to get got.
So Logic, remember that Micro Center build I was looking at?
Yeah. Yep.
No, I don't think this is the same. This can't be the same one.
This is actually big deal news. If this is not April Fool's, I don't think this is April. It's December 3rd.
So, what was the best April Fool's joke you saw today?
The PlayStation one was kind of funny.
Yeah, the Playmo.
The Playmo, yeah.
Oh man, that's wild.
I'm not seeing this picked up. I'm trying to.
Oh, never mind.
There seems to be a story posted that Samsung has bought Micron's consumer business.
There was also one that AMD was buying Intel.
Yeah, this might be April Fool's. I can't tell.
It's probably April Fool's.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Logic. Micro Center, it's still $2,500. So mine was $200 less. So I paid $2,300.
So you bought? So yours is a pre-built?
Yeah, pre-built. Yeah, we tried to. I tried to price out the parts.
It cost probably 3 times that price, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the RAM and the storage is what sent it over the edge. I mean,
the RAM is.
Yeah. So I was looking at Micro Center. They had a pre-built power spec for $2,500. Mine was $2,300. It's $200 cheaper. At Costco, but it was an MSI build, the 5080, 32 gigs of memory, and 2 terabytes of storage.
Okay.
Yeah, 360 millimeter AIO, and actually came. So this is why I was surprised with Forte. It actually came with 2 Corsair sticks, memory sticks, with RGBs. Corsair Vengeance. I was like, what?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was RGBs too. I was surprised. Like, what?
They didn't skip out on you?
No, I was surprised.
Hey,
because all of the YouTube videos I saw of this build, none of them had the Corsair Vengeance memory sticks in there.
Oh, that's what's up.
Yeah, so this thing runs so cool. Forte. I ran Cyberpunk with path tracing on, and
oh man, you living a good life.
This thing didn't even sweat.
Living a good life. That's what I'm talking about.
I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2 4K ultra settings. Didn't even sweat. Nothing.
Nope.
It was running so cool. Oh, I was like, oh, this is it.
It was like 4K who? I got you 4K.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, I got to re-up on Game Pass because Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is there. I want to re-download.
So they gonna get you to re-up, man? I thought you said you weren't doing that no more.
I'll do it for like 3 months and then I'm out. Unless
what you say now. That's what you say now.
No, I do it like 3 months.
Sharma got you back in, bro.
No.
Xbox about to get they spin back up.
Wow. Hey. You went around for earlier the show. Somebody got upset because I said that my PC with the green RGB. Because somebody asked me for it, why do you have the green RGBs? I'm like, it's my Xbox. This is my Xbox.
Yeah, it's my Xbox too.
Yeah, someone's like, Someone got upset. Some people got upset. Got really weird about it. Like, do you turn on blue lights when you play PlayStation games? I'm like, no, I don't. I got a PS5 for that.
No, got a PS5 for that.
So,
At least
anyhow.
Would you rather me have RGB puke on the screen? Because that's what most people's PCs are. RGB puke.
So, but all right, I do need to wrap up. I got to get to bed, unfortunately. But Forte, no, thanks for coming through, man. I really appreciate it. Always a pleasure, sir. Great to see you. Please don't be a stranger. I know you're busy, but if you can, even if it's late, join us.
Oh well, yeah, that's why I did it today.
Yeah, but yeah, you guys go live tomorrow night. Let everyone know they can find you and Slow-Mo, who's probably playing Call of Duty again right now.
Absolutely. Gaming Forte, YouTube, Twitter, Xbox Live, PlayStation, DPS podcast tomorrow night with the homie Snowball Backslap. Going to be a great time. Everybody is welcome to come over. Even BRAP, you can come over. Logic.
Yeah, I need to come by. It's been too long.
You've been a while. I know. That's what I'm saying. It's been way too long. You need to like show your face. Logic was on a couple weeks ago, but and that was a great time too. But yeah, great time. As always, enjoy the games that you are playing, and have a great week.
Thank you, Forte. And Logic, I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do,
he wants to be
everyone
found.
they can find you.
You can swing by my channel, the Rounding Off Infinity gaming channel on YouTube, and check out my solo cast each week. I don't really know that it has a title, so just look for live shows. It might be called the Games Memo, something like that.
Awesome. By the way, really cool that we sent astronauts towards the moon today. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no. Back to work. Let's go.
You know, I said it to my daughter today. I was like, "Hey, we're launching a rocket of astronauts towards the moon," and she looks at me, she's like, "So?" I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
I was like, "That used to be a mo."
I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool.
It is. They're finally doing something with the space program again.
Yeah, they're gonna circle the moon, the backside of the moon, and I forget what they're looking for. I think they're looking for like water.
Yeah. But basically, it's just another reason to
they want to build a moon base.
They want to build a moon base, right? Exactly.
Yeah, and that didn't pan out well in Destiny, so I have some concerns about that.
But you know what? You know what's the more interesting thing? So this is my scientific side coming out. The Voyager 2 probe, which is in the outer reaches of space, which I forget what they call it.
Where is it now?
It's in interstellar space, so it's like just outside of the breadth of the sun's reach. So it's completely dark out there. It's still in our universe, but it's just outside of the sun's reach. So it's like in pitch darkness out there. And what's cool is this year, that probe has been going since since the late 70s.
It's literally 49 years old.
Yeah, it's old. And I think it's over 3 billion miles or kilometers or something away from the Earth. But they're starting to turn off some of the systems again. And I think they're saying by 2030, the last systems will be turned off for it, and then it will just keep going in the same direction that it's going, unimpeded for the rest of the time.
Well, but Voyager 1 is further than Voyager 2.
No. Voyager 2 is Voyager 2 was further than 1.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, because Voyager 1, so most known fact, because I love science. The reason Voyager 1 launched, the reason Voyager 1 was the first one that launched. Voyager 2 is further than Voyager 1 because when they launched Voyager 2, they launched it at a trajectory where it could pass Voyager 1 in a certain amount of time. So by the time it reached Saturn, it already had passed Voyager 1. So it's basically because the way that the planets lined up, it was able to slingshot off of every planet that it passed, versus Voyager 1 could only slingshot off of Saturn. But Voyager 2 slingshotted off Saturn, off Neptune, even off Pluto. And that's why it's further out into the galaxy, because it was using the inertia of the planets that it was passing to slingshot to get more and more speed. So even though they launched like 3 months apart from each, 3 or 4 months apart, Voyager 2 is light years, not light years, but like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles further out than Voyager 1 is.
I'm looking at some of these pictures of Jupiter.
Oh, it's cool, bro.
It
like
cool.
The pictures of the rings and stuff of Saturn, and watching like Jupiter be on its side and stuff. Not Jupiter, is it Uranus? The one that's on its side with the rings? I think that's Uranus.
Pause.
Yeah, not Uranus, Uranus, sir.
It still sounds the same to me.
Is it the opposite of that, Brian? It might be the opposite.
Brian's saying Voyager 1 is farther. That's
so.
what I thought.
No, you're right. Voyager 2 was the one that's why they launched Voyager 2 first. He's right. Because that's why Voyager 1 is called Voyager 1, even though it launched after Voyager 2. Voyager 2 launched first, then they launched Voyager 1. And the reason it's Voyager 1 is because they knew it was going to be further out in the cosmos because of all the slingshotting of the planets.
Well, I'll say this. I think it's cool that despite what my daughter said to me today, I think it's really cool that we had a launch today. You know, I mean, I grew up watching, the space shuttles and everything. So I think it's really cool. My youngest son thought it was cool. He wanted to see he was actually a little like bummed out he couldn't watch it live because he was at soccer practice, but we ended up watching the replay of the launch.
Okay, here it is. Here it is right here. Voyager 1 maintains a blazing speed of approximately 38,000 miles per hour, mainly through gravitational assist from Jupiter and Saturn. It received initial propulsion from the Titan Saturnia rocket and then used the orbital momentum of those massive planets as slingshots to boost its speed and escape the solar system without requiring constant fuel.
That's wild.
So yeah, so the premise of what I was saying is right. I just had the two probes mixed up.
There's something about I read something about Jupiter's gravitational pull.
It's the reason it has 3 moons around it.
Yeah, but there's something about Jupiter's gravitational pull that holds something in place. Oh, it's almost like a is it a shield? It's in a way I don't know. I have to go back and read again. I thought I read something about Jupiter and its gravitational pull is a reason why we're able to avoid like meteorites or not like large comets and stuff. Or asteroids. Yeah, I don't know. I got to go back and read it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you start going down the rabbit hole of science, man, it just makes you want to geek out. I tell people all the time, it's like math is so cool, especially when like people hate math, but math is like the coolest thing you could do. That's why I always loved it. But it's so boring because it's just numbers on a sheet, and people just don't like, looking at that stuff. But then when you like put it into practice around like scientific discoveries and stuff, in the way that math can like solve problems, it's like, oh man, that's actually really cool when you put it in that context. Like
Jupiter has the strongest gravity in the solar system.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like gravity assists as Voyager flew by Jupiter and Saturn. The planet's immense gravity pulled the spacecraft, transferring a tiny portion of their orbital energy to it to accelerate it without fuel. So can you imagine just being on a probe that just goes by a giant, like Jupiter is like twice the size of Earth.
Oh, it's bigger than twice the size of Earth. It's
like 2 to 3 times the size of Earth. It's like wild, bro.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what I read. Jupiter's widely considered the planet that protects Earth by acting as a cosmic shield. Its massive gravity acts like a vacuum cleaner, attracting, deflecting, or absorbing asteroids and comets that could otherwise collide with Earth. That's what I read.
The planets.
All right, I didn't mean to like get into the solar system. Yeah, Logic. Any thoughts on the launch today? I don't know if if you're interested by anything, if you're
No.
finding that
Well,
stuff interesting.
I was focused on more earthly matters.
you want to know more
More
earthly
earthly matters.
matters? Listen, the next most important time in the history of Earth will be May 6, 2492, where you can see every planet line up in a straight line, compared to the sun.
Mm.
Like all these planets will be aligned for one day on May 6, 2492.
Yeah, that sounds like the end of days, but
The last time that's happened was like AD 949 is the last time that happened.
I think it's when the dinosaurs became extinct. I'm joking.
The dinosaurs were
They were.
gone.
I know. They were gone way before that. Yeah.
They were. Listen, man, we weren't even thought of at that point, dog.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, all right, gentlemen. Well, thank you, thank you, and oh my gosh, I gotta get to bed.
Hey, that's 400 years from now. Now I think about it. Holy crap!
But
we could live that long.
Yeah, maybe we go into like a cryo chamber or something, and we're.
They already have those people, and they already have those. Those are already here,
like Fallout.
Shelters.
Yeah, yeah, great show, by the way. Really, I'm a big fan of the Fallout series on Amazon Prime. Want to thank everyone in the live chat for watching the show. Thank you, everyone. Please do me a favor, hit that like button, and if you're new, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification. Check out DPS podcast tomorrow at 9 p.m. with Forte and Slow Mo Backslap. And on that note, we're out. Thank you to the co-host tonight, Game Logic and Gaming Forte. Thank you, gentlemen. Always a pleasure. And we'll catch you next time. See you next Wednesday, 9 p.m.
Peace.
Enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the weekend. Have fun playing video games.
Don't forget to take your Ovaltine.
Oh boy.
It's my favorite part of that movie.
Oh my goodness. All right, we'll catch everyone. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Later.